Are you familiar with division by zero? The closer an equation gets to zero, the higher the increase of change becomes, approaching infinity.
Actually, that's wrong. Division by zero is when you have a rational equation where x is in the denominator and you keep assigning values to x that approach zero. This behavior is called, in this case, vertical asymptote. As x approaches zero from either the positive or negative direction, the value of y increases or decreases without bound, meaning it tends to positive or negative infinity. This is because division by a number very close to zero results in a very large magnitude of y. The limit of the equation is two intervals from negative infinity to almost zero, and almost zero to positive infinity. And the funny thing is that, contrary to what he said, the graphical change of the equation gets less and less evident the closer to zero the value gets. Sorry, I had to stop.
You can't explain something like that to somebody who's an idiot because they're an idiot. Like, every time that, like, let's say the cat shits on the floor, you can't sit down with the cat and be like, listen, man, when you shit on the floor, it smells bad. And then I have to clean everything up. And then when I have to clean everything up, I have to buy things to clean up. I gotta take time out of my day. Because the cat's just like, where's my food? He's not gonna understand that shit.
Out.
In this case, we have a
never gonna work.
That there's another world out. No evidence, but these constant hints. Game developers keep dropping out. For instance, in the case of Sekiro's art book, teasing that he might be a ninja in the other side of the story. In the case of Bloodborne, we see Gurman in the fishing hamlet, in a magazine can, things that haven't been found in their respective games. The first answer is it was cut in development.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world.
So he thinks that every video game has an alternate reality that he's not able to access, and he only bought half of the game.
My man, that's just world building. A thing developers and creators do to expand and enrich their imaginary world for their fictional stories. It's not a conspiracy theory about deliberately hidden content, but we're not going to convince you are.
No.
The thing that caught our attention in the beginning was that we thought the guy was suing FromSoft because of the DLC difficulty, which turned out to be about 10% true, perhaps. One can make the argument that the dude thinks the game too hard, and he's making excuses on why he can't uncover perceived hidden content, but we don't think that's really the case. This guy's just a loon. However, who knows? Maybe some data miner will discover never-seen-before new secrets in older Souls titles, and reveal that all this time this guy was an evil mastermind of sorts. But no, I don't think that's going to happen, to be honest. At the end of the day, this is just a crazy guy talking crazy shit. Legal experts doubt the lawsuit will succeed.
Well, here's the thing, is that if it existed, people would have found it. How many of you guys hit the wall 100 times in Volcano Manor? Yep. That's right. It's too bad, huh?
Citing the speculative nature of the claims and the challenge of proving consumer deception at the time of making this goofy video, data miners have not uncovered evidence of a hidden game within Elden Ring or other From Software titles. Additionally, from a legal standpoint, proving that the game's difficulty constitutes deceptive practice under consumer protection laws will be difficult without substantial evidence. And the plaintiff must demonstrate how this alleged deception has harmed consumers. Good luck with that, bro. But yeah, we just wanted to share this batshit crazy story, and we're eager to see how this moves forward after the day of the court hearing. That's about it. See ya.
It would be so fucking funny if they live streamed this trial. Like, if they did that, I don't even know what I would do. I would be so fucking happy. The Truesome people, absolutely. Yeah, I like this. Yeah, this was really funny. I'll link you guys the video. Exactly. Like, yeah. What a Tronotry? Yeah, watch all 1 minute of it. Yeah, exactly. There's the video right there. This is Jack and Daxter, Crash Bandicoot, Sora, Sly Cooper, and Ratchet and Clank. This is a dude that grew up on PlayStation 4. Or PlayStation 2, not 4. PlayStation 2. How do I know that? Because I had all the same games. They were so good. Ooh.
Do you ever think back to when video games were just simple? When games could just be games, and you could be an idiot 6-year-old who can't figure out how to get off the starting island in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, you actually you gotta hit the tree to get the coconuts. The coconuts will fall down.
Hit it. It feels like back then they could just make anything they wanted to. Studios took chances, building experiences that, while not perfect, were still iconic. And don't get it twisted, all right? I like the AAA games we're getting right now. I'm definitely not saying that video games aren't fun anymore, but I can't help looking back at all these older games and missing the charm that they all had, especially compared to now. They definitely weren't.
I think that you still have that a lot with games, right? It's just that you also have these games that are made as corporate slop as well. Yeah, I think that trophies, like, I actually think that having achievements in video games was bad for video games. Maybe this is a hot take, but I think that it ends up being worse for video games than being good. Because, like, what they do is they direct gameplay, and oftentimes it does it in a way that's annoying or unfun.
All fantastic, but when I look back at them, they all just
By the way,
seem-
I don't think that's like an objective opinion. Like, I don't think people that disagree are wrong or something like that. That's just the way I see it.
so whimsical and wonderfully simple to me. And sure, you know, that opinion is probably largely shaped around nostalgia. And
Yeah,
it's more
well,
likely I miss the simpler times in my life. Which,
True.
we'll talk about nostalgia more towards the end of the video, but I do mean this literally. I adore the simplicity of the games from this era. When I talk about a time when video games were simple, I think a different time period probably comes to each of our heads, right? For you, it might be the
1998.
PS1, or even the Atari.
Yep.
You're ancient and decaying. For me,
Shut
I think
the
of the
fuck up.
PS2 and just all those classic games from that console. Like Kingdom Hearts, Jack and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, the weird game with the alien face on the cover that kind of
didn't have this
freaked me
one, but I
out
have
too much
all
to
the
pick
other
up.
ones.
The hundreds of stupid licensed games that came out around this time that were all just exactly the same, except that one. I loved that one.
I think the Lord of the Rings one was good too. Like the second and third one were really good. The Two Towers and Return of the King was really good. It's actually a good game.
Every game didn't have to be a groundbreaking cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah.
It could just be a fun game. One aspect I really admire about those PS2 games is that they seem to prioritize gameplay and fun over anything. Whereas anymore, it seems gameplay gets sidelined by the cutscenes in the story.
I think this is a huge problem too, and I think this is one of the big reasons why people like From Software games, is that a lot of the actual games that come out, it seems like they have great cutscenes, great sound, great graphics and everything, but actually playing the game, like actually going down and playing the game, is hard to do. It's not good.
The gaming industry has changed a lot over the years, okay?
Yeah.
It's not your grandpa's GameCube anymore. We got esports teams and VR chat twerk-offs now. The Last of Us is a phenomenal game series that tells a familiar yet strikingly unique story and has some of the best character writing I've ever seen in a video game. Due to some not-so-careful redactions, we learned that on their latest entry, The Last of Us Part 2, Naughty Dog spent $220 million over the course of 6 years to develop the game. To put that into perspective, they developed the first Crash Bandicoot game for $1.7 million. With that $220 million, they delivered on these stunning, cutting-edge graphics, as well as creating a gripping narrative and overall impactful experience. But when you play these games, it becomes abundantly clear that—
I just think this is like entropy, right? Where like, once things get big, they just get bigger. It's like, oh, well, we made 100 million on this one. Well, let's spend 100 million on the next one instead of 50, and we'll make 300 million. It's like people just keep upping the ante and scaling up and up and up.
The Last of Us does not embrace its
Until it
identity
fails.
as a video game at all. The gameplay loop consists of you walking around slowly, looking at everything like you're in a museum. Maybe avoiding some mushroom zombies sometimes. And if you walk into an area with waist-height walls, you know some guys are gonna come out and try to shoot at you. The combat
I
is—
think another good example of like gameplay being king is Once Human and First Descendant. Both of these games don't have any real focus on story. They don't have any focus on world building. The graphics are Unreal 5 slop. And it doesn't really matter because the games play well and there's a good combat loop, right? And that's why people are playing them. You look at how popular, look at Pow World, right? It doesn't really matter. And these are just devs that try to, I think, one of the worst things to happen to video games is video game developers thinking that they are movie stars or thinking that they are movie directors. Find it very annoying. Obviously, Kojima is not included, but everybody else besides him.
Passable at best, and over time just becomes a boring obstacle between you and the next cutscene. It really is a shame, you know, because the world they built is so beautiful to look at. But there's nothing to touch.
Who cares?
I'm all for story in the game.
Bro, that's so fucking true. Listen to this again.
Beautiful to look at. But there's nothing to touch.
That's exactly fucking right, bro. That's so perfectly fucking stated. Yes. It's a great world. It looks amazing. But what the fuck are you gonna do in it? What's the point? Why is it there?
For story in the game, but it should never take precedent over the actual gameplay. And hey, I'm a problem solver, all right?
I actually think that story-based games like The Last of Us are great and they have a place, but I think too many games try to go this route, and I think they're making a mistake by doing so. That's really, like, I have no problem with this. It's great, but the problem is, like, there's like it seems like there's trying to be like a merging of like entertainment mediums where people are trying to be like TV shows and movies with games. And like you see this obviously with things like Suicide Squad, The Last of Us Part 2, etc. It's very annoying. Because games are not the same thing.
Here to help you, Naughty Dog. I'm going to tell you exactly what you have to do to fix this problem. You go through a couple of levels, you get us really hooked in, and then you give Ellie a fishtail, and you have her swim around and sing a really bad song with Ariel from The Little Mermaid.
And the
That
song
sounds like Xenosaga Zero.
it's gotta be really, really bad. Really, it's gotta be horrible.
No, you're right. You can't do that, okay? It's a serious game with a serious tone. We don't need to do any of that. You know, no game has ever retained its serious tone while breaking immersion slightly for the sake of fun. It's never been done. It's not going to happen, all right? Bad example. I'm sorry. Let's look at the Insomniac Spider-Man games instead. You know, they're wacky and less based in realism. They had a phenomenal story, except for the third act of the second game. I'm still pretty mad about that. Peter should have been Venom. I'm standing on that business. And the gameplay here, oh my God, they got it perfect. They did it. They did what Naughty Dog couldn't do. Sometimes. I could web sling around the city all day, and they had their Little Mermaid moment.
That's nice that they have that. I mean, it's cool that they have that, but like, I remember played Spider-Man 1 or 2 for the original PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2. That game, you could do that in that game. Sometimes I think back, like, I remember playing that game, and like, I didn't really like superhero games a lot, but I remember playing it like, man, this is really good. What the fuck? I was like, kind of, I didn't know what to think.
Venom and I guess Mary Jane now, that was all right. But what I want to talk to you about specifically are the mini. You know, those little moments where it's like, oh, Peter's a scientist. Here's some scientist stuff. Match up these different colors and lines because he's a scientist. It's science stuff. Those have got to be the worst mini games ever made. And Insomniac knows.
I hate
Why
dogs.
else would they give you an option to skip them? It's all right, whatever. They didn't come up that much in the first one. I can get over it. At least I got to
hate
skip them and
dogs.
move on. Maybe they'll take them out by the second one. Wrong. It's different this time. Now it's in 3D and you got to take out the bad shapes. It's worse. It's somehow so much worse in this one. And I know it's a relative.
It's because people think that they can always make it better. And this is, again, another big problem with developers now, is that a lot of these devs think that they can make it better. They're like, okay, well, I have my way that I'm going to do it better than somebody else. It's like, again, Game of Thrones or Rings of Power. Okay, let me get this straight. There's a guy that they've spent 20, 30, 40, 10, maybe, I don't know, $1 million paying this guy not to do anything, but just to let them use his book. He doesn't have to do anything. He just gives a book. Oh, yeah, sure. And just tell us what to do. And you think you're two idiots. You think that you know better than he does? Oh, if you know so good, then why is nobody buying your book? Why nobody making a show about your book? You think that you're going to be able to do it better than Tolkien. Which, by the way, Tolkien, he wasn't just like some, oh, he wrote a book. This guy was like an esteemed college professor. He was a World War I soldier. he was a linguist. Like, he invented entire languages out of the game, out of like the world he made. Like, this dude defined fantasy. Like, almost all of the fantasy tropes that we have now, many of them are derivative from Lord of the Rings. Tolkien made fantasy. Yes, he defined it. But no, you got no. But you know how it's. You know what? No. But you know what to do. You know how to. But you know better than that. What are you thinking, man?
Really small problem to point out, but man, just situations like this just make me miss games like Sly Cooper that would put you in a submarine and say, there's crabs coming to steal the treasure. You have to shoot all the crabs and make sure they don't come get it. They didn't bother trying to make it make sense within the story. They just made something fun. I don't think every AAA game needs to be good. But I do
know what a really great example of this is recently? You know it, I know it, everybody knows it, Another Crab's Treasure. That was a PlayStation 2 game made in the year 2024. It was. It was fucking amazing. Crab Souls? Yep.
The clicking queue is extremely long on this weapon. Holy shit.
When they embrace their identity as video games and deliver experiences,
The attack queue is so
it seems
long.
like they really went in this direction because these cinematic games have the most wide reach. They don't really want to risk it with something that might not appeal to everyone, right? We could never get an insane concept like Kingdom Hearts made today. The idea of taking...
I think the reason why they do it actually is because these games have the highest projected potential revenue. So from a studio perspective that's like investor driven, that's what they're going to care about the most. Because like they can project revenue based off of a target audience that this game could attract that's going to be higher than any other game. So that's really the reason why I think it happens.
These two insanely different franchises, Final Fantasy, a JRPG series, and the Disney multiverse, and mashing them together in some big world-hopping adventure led by a character nobody's ever heard of. That is not something we would get today. And do you know how this idea came to be? Well, apparently back in the 90s, Square Enix and Disney both had offices in the same building. And one fateful day, an employee from Square Enix and an employee from Disney just so happened to end up in the same elevator. And they got to talking, and they were like, hello, Disney employee I just met. Wouldn't it be cool to mash up our universes together and then send some kid around them beating everything up with a key?
Yeah, I've never heard of this before.
And that kid's Kingdom Hearts to be. I read it on nextshark.com, so you know it's true. If there ever was a video game that embraced its identity as a video game, it is goddamn Kingdom Hearts. This game makes no sense, but it's so much fun. Why the hell is Cloud?
Another game, like, again, Another Crab's Treasure is one example, and Power World is another example. Power World doesn't worry about, like, a story. It's not about, like, the graphics. Yeah, the game looks good, but, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, people just want to have good gameplay. And, like, Helldivers 2. What's the story of Helldivers 2? Yeah, Super Earth, and there's, like, democracy, and there's, like, aliens that hate democracy, so you shoot them, and then there's robots, you shoot them, too. And, like, yeah, basically, you have to blow them up, and that's it. It's really simple. Monster Hunter, yeah. Gameplay games always come out ahead.
From Final Fantasy making a deal with Hades and fighting in the hero games on Olympus. I don't know, who cares? I'm Sora and I'm gonna hit this big dog with a key I found. When you travel between the different Disney worlds in Kingdom Hearts, sometimes the art style, the character designs, and even entire gameplay mechanics will change based on where you go. I keep referencing the Little Mermaid level in Kingdom Hearts because genuinely, when I played this, it was so mind-blowing to me. I love that even at a point so deep into this game, they were still willing to change the fundamental mechanics of how you play it just to keep things fresh. And don't even get me...
I think a really good example for me isn't actually... I never really played Kingdom Hearts, never really gave a shit about it. But going down to Ash Lake in Dark Souls 1. A random tree that's off on the side of somewhere else. If you have to climb all the way up a tree or all the way down a tree, and then you do that, and you come out into this massive fucking area, and it's like you hear the music. Oh, fucking a giant hydra there, these like weird bugs, and you go all the way through there, and there's a fucking dragon at the end of it, and you can cut off his tail and get one of the best weapons in the game. Like, what the fuck? It's crazy. And it was like, how many people discovered that? I would say probably less than 20% of people that played Dark Souls for the first time discovered that.
Started on the goddamn Gumi ship. I don't know if it's Gumi or Gummy, I'm saying.
Yeah, probably.
When I first played it, it was kind of annoying at first. I was thinking, why am I doing this? But now, anymore, I'm traveling between the worlds and I'm up in the Gumi ship shooting stuff. Why the hell do they need a spaceship to get between the Disney worlds? I don't know why they thought they needed a spaceship, but it was awesome. And it was the Gumi ship, and shut the fuck up. I'm not entirely sure if this is the case, but it really seems to me like when games were cheaper to make, studios were willing to make pretty much anything and just throw it out.
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense, right? I mean, if your investment is a lot lower, of course you can take more risks. That's common sense. Of course. Yeah, so now they can't afford to take risks whenever they invest $150 million into a video game. So again, they have to make the video game appeal to everyone. Which makes it appeal to no one.
I was eating it up. I love sitting down crisscross applesauce on the floor of a GameStop, just going through the wall of so many different PS2 games, picking out insane shit like Marvel Nemesis, Rise of the Imperfects. I feel like I dreamed this. Sure, they were goofy and didn't exactly maximize profit, but does that mean they weren't worth making? I guess where AAA's concerned.
I think another really great example of this recently is Armored Core 6, is that From Software has made Souls games for the last 10 years, and then they just decide, hey, by the way, you know those mech games we used to make? We're gonna do another one. Okay. And it was great. It was awesome.
Always going to be
It's a different audience.
If you want
Yeah,
a
I think a little
game
bit.
developer,
You're right about
you
that.
look to the indie games. There's got to be some video essay YouTuber to indie game pipeline, because I was never really that into indie games, but recently I played Hades and Rollerdrome, and it was some of the most fun I've had playing games in a long time. While it seems the games that prioritize fun overall are only coming from indie developers anymore, there is a genre.
That's because the developers, the big studios are trying to make games that they want to make the next The Last of Us. They want to make God of War. Because I do think that a lot of those studio, like the main people that are like behind these games, want to be considered with like the same degree of like respect that a director of movies is. I do think that there's a big ego behind it. I know it sounds like stupid, but I think it's true.
And that, my friends, is the shitty licensed games. This has got to be the greatest loss in my lifetimes. Those shitty early 2000s movie tie-in licensed games that came with every mildly successful property. If there was a cartoon you liked in the early 2000s,
there's a game for it.
Tie-in game.
That's right.
If there was a movie you kind of enjoyed, tie-in game. Look up any franchise that had moderate success in this time period and add the game at the end, and you're probably gonna get something. It would be impossible.
And they were all garbage, except for like 5.
Count how many there were, and they were all bad, but I loved them anyway. Like the Cat in the Hat movie tie-in game, what a beautiful nightmare that was. Give me a bottle of Dayquil and the Cat in the Hat PS2 game, and I'm having a great week. If you've ever played one of these games before, you've probably seen this little intro screen.
THQ? Yeah.
THQ was responsible for not all, but a lot of these tie-in games. It seemed their business model was to buy up the license for a mildly successful property,
and then make a mildly good game.
Cheap, easy game, and launch it right when that movie or TV show was peaking in popularity, so that they could feed off of that hype. And clearly it worked, because in the span of a couple of years, they released literal hundreds of...
Holy fuck. That's insane. How do you do this? It's a good try. Yeah, how much money did they make?
games. They hit the cartoons hard. They got Jimmy Neutron, Scooby-Doo, so
That's what I'm
much
curious
SpongeBob.
about.
Fairly Odd Parents, Tack and the mother-fudging
farming.
power of Juju. This one was a banger. Rugrats, Teen Titans, Barnyard, Danny Phantom, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Seriously, so much SpongeBob. And they hit the movies too. Cars, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, Wall-E.
Oh, yeah.
They had Star Wars under their belt. And
Some of those
episode
were pretty
3
good.
was a slapper.
Yeah.
These guys dominated the licensed tie-in games. And eventually, they just stopped. I was looking around.
See, he's a younger guy, so he doesn't remember. See, he's talking about tie-ins to movies. Bro, we used to have tie-ins to Cheetos. You had Chester the Cheetah video game. That's all it was. It was just Cheetos. And then, oh, there's another one. There we go. See, he's talking about PlayStation 2. Remember PlayStation 1? You had Pepsi Man. Straight up, these people would just go and make a game that's basically an advertisement for Pepsi. And that's all it was. Chex Quest? Yes. Burger King? This is a big fucking thing. Chester Cheetah, too cool to fool. I remember seeing this shit at Blockbuster Movies. Blockbuster Video, yeah, it'd be right there. This was very popular back in the day. Every cereal had a game in it? Yeah, it did.
The internet trying to figure out why they stopped. Where did he go? Everything I found kind of suggested that they didn't stop making them, but they moved over to the more profitable sector of the video game
Gotcha
market.
games?
The mobile games.
Hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
So back in the 2000s, they were farming stupid kids by making movie games, and now they're farming stupid kids by making anime gotcha games. Hey. It's smart, yeah.
And you know what? They were probably right to do so. Even I ended up spending money in Family Guy: The Quest for Stuff. I wanted to build my Quahog to look cool. Holy fuck. There were a lot of these games, and most of them were bad. But
yes,
for every
they were
100 shitty cookie-cutter games, there was one gem. Odds are, if you had a PS2, you probably played The Simpsons hit.
What?
I can't do one of these.
By all means, should have
Another
just
blue
been
one?
another shitty tie-in in the series of shitty tie-ins. But this one just so happened to be amazing. It was a GTA clone that was like better than GTA. In fact, it did the multiple characters, the character switching before GTA 5 did it. That means The Simpsons predicted GTA 5. It is time to write another Kotaku article. Some of my personal favorites were The Matrix: Path of Neo. I don't know why I liked it.
I remember this game. I never played it, but I remember seeing it at stores.
Ever seen The Matrix? I just really was drawn to this game because it made me feel insane. I don't know how to describe it. I loved the Star Wars Episode 3 tie-in game because it had this cool alternate ending, and I was obsessed with this fight on Mustafar between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and so being able to do that and get a different result just like blew my little mind. And obviously, Spider-Man 2. I think a lot of people forget this was a movie tie-in.
This was the game, bro. This game had no business being as good as it was. This shit came out, it should have been illegal.
And even this one had great mini-games, the most iconic mini-game.
And the thing is also, like, and if you go and you look at this gameplay, and like this, let me see if I can just get a better frame. Holy fuck.
Should I kill Prestigious X just for the...
This really isn't that far off over what we have now. Like, in terms of actual gameplay, you're basically vaulting around the city in the same way that you do now. It just looks
where you
way
go around
better.
delivering pizzas with that insane music playing. Why couldn't we get that in Insomniac Spider-Man instead of Match the Shapes and Colors? A licensed tie-in game that a lot of people liked was SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, and I know a lot of people like this one because it got a big fat ring. We've established that the game studios are in this for the money, right? And it's safe to assume that they want the safest bets for their money. The most revenue with the least risk. No brainer. Why don't they just take things people already like and do it again?
That's exactly what they're doing.
One Foot game was so good.
There's one right there.
Hey, boss fight.
You want to see another example of it? Let's go ahead and take a look at another example. Oh. Oh. Just do it again. People really like Pokemon. Well, why don't we just go and make another game just like Pokemon? Okay. Sure, but you want to give them guns. Okay, that's fine. That's it. Yeah, it's so easy. I don't know why some of these devs can't figure it out. FIFA Classic, yeah, do it again, but better. Yes.
I think this aversion to risk is absolutely doing damage to the industry, but what do I know? I'm just a guy, and clearly the numbers say otherwise. But I think in all of this, the consumer is not blameless. It is me. I'm the consumer. They're only gonna do something if they know we're gonna buy it, and oh man, am I gonna buy it? I've been loving the remakes lately, I'm not gonna lie. I don't really think we needed 5 iterations of the 2 Last of Us games, but for example, like Resident Evil 4 remake, or the Dead Space remake, or some
the Demon Souls remake was fucking insane. It was so good.
My favorite games in 2023. They may have been remakes, yes, rehashing old ideas, but I felt like in those 2 examples specifically, they expanded the gameplay systems and made changes that honestly justified remakes. In Dead Space alone, the zero gravity overhaul was game-changing, as well as a voice protagonist where there wasn't one before. So they're not just throwing stuff out, you know, they actually do seem to care about some of these games. The Resident Evil 4 remake was a breath of fresh air for me because I got the quality of life from a AAA game, but the goofy, campy fun from a PS2 game. The graphics were stunning and the gameplay was tight and well optimized. And I also got to go up to the shady weapons dealer and buy a rocket launcher to just shoot the final boss with. I just cheesed the entire fight, and the game let me because it was more fun that way. The simplicity.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is another problem that a lot of games have, is that they're too focused around making the game balanced and making everything hard rather than making the game fun to play. And I think really, like, an example of a game that I think that's kind of Helldivers 2. I kind of felt that way about Helldivers 2, but there wasn't anything. So, like, I like being able to play games where it's like you feel like you're getting away with something or you're cheating. Like you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing. And that feeling, like, I get that in Elden Ring, for example.
Yeah.
When I play the shield build and I just block every attack from the last boss.
Yeah, it never feels like I really defeated anything in Elden Ring.
Like, I got you, right? And I know, obviously, they developed it and they designed it that way, but it feels like that ownership is mine, right? Whenever I figure something out like that. So,
I feel bad about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, in Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, I had like a team that could solo kill the raid boss, right? Lucilius. And I could just go AFK, right? And I just had a macro to where like my character would just keep hitting the same button over and over. And the other 3 people on the team would just do the entire mission for me. So that was super fucking fun. And I think that really a lot of games try to focus on like being challenging and being hard rather than being fun. And I think this is a huge issue.
That I had been missing.
The farm chase in Elden Ring, absolutely.
And I loved every second of it. To me, this trend of remakes is proof that I'm not alone in missing a time when video games were simple. And it's also proof that nostalgia can and will be weaponized at any moment possible. And memory.
I also think like another good example of a good game recently that's come out, and I actually think that, so this might be a hot take, I think Stellar Blade would have been more well received if it had a male protagonist. I think that all of the noise about Stellar Blade, oh, look at her butt's so big. Like, oh, this isn't realistic. Like, the game itself was insanely fucking good. It had no business being as good as it was, but nobody was talking about that because of all the other noise. Dragon's Dogma 2 was great too. Dragon's Dogma 2 was good, but it could have been a lot better.
I cannot teleport.
Are only good if they are profitable. I am happy that younger generations and just more people in general get to experience these games that I loved as a kid and see why for themselves. And also I'm happy that we get to experience these games in ultra realistic graphics, 4K huevos shrinking technology, only playable with the Gigafart 8500 graphics card. You may need to upgrade your PC to play this game. I can appreciate good graphics. I mean, I really like when a game looks pretty, but I think this looks better than this, and this looks better than this. Technically,
I think that there's a really big problem that people think that graphical fidelity is artistic quality. Whereas like the art direction and the lighting
Renala?
and the way that things are presented, like the framing of the game, the style, is more important than the fidelity of the game. And I think that the amount of Unreal 5 games that have come out that just look very samey is like the best evidence that I could give you of that being true.
This has higher resolution and better lighting.
It does.
This has better
Art direction.
Yeah,
high resolution textures and pretty lighting. Always going to be outshined by inspired art direction, creativity, and a focus on atmosphere. This isn't something that...
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like, I think Elden Ring is the best example of this. Elden Ring actually has pretty low graphical fidelity. If you actually look at the models in Elden Ring, they're good, but they're not the same level of quality as a lot of other AAA games. But because the lighting and the way the models are designed is so good, and the way they're presented in the game is so good, it literally doesn't matter. Same as Bloodborne is awful. If you look at Bloodborne, the graphics on the game are terrible, but it doesn't matter because of the way that it's presented.
Gone from modern gaming. In fact, a lot of recent games have left my jaw on the floor because of Bloodborne.
And there's also Classic WoW. Think about Classic WoW and how many like really great zones, like framings and frames they have in that game. And it's like the graphics on it are really bad, but it doesn't matter because the style is so good.
Bloodborne, holy shit, Bloodborne. I think it was more common to focus on art direction back then because they were limited. They couldn't make a realistic looking game. They had to do something unique. Even the games shooting for a realistic approach could not pull off realism. I mean, that is not real.
That's not like real life, yeah.
The phrase I really like to mention before is limitation leads to creativity. Trying to make a game back on the PS2, I imagine was extremely limited.
Really? Really?
So creative, making these unique looking games. I often find that when creating something and you run into a problem, that solution that you come up with to the problem leads
Which is kind of
to an
easy, man.
infinitely more
I used the
interesting
Milady.
and unique final product. Like I said, we
probably
still
true.
get a lot of
Yeah,
stunning
it's a good
games
point.
coming out lately, but I feel like now with the ability to actually create games that, while not perfectly realistic, look pretty damn real, that becomes the only focus, is making a game that looks realistic, not one...
I think games, like, I like games that have great graphics, but really good graphics will never get me to play a game regularly. Because if it did, New World wouldn't be a dead game. New World had some of the best lighting and the best world design of, like, any MMO. But it still died because there's nothing really to do in the game.
that is creative in its visuals. In a lot of ways, I miss those older games that we used to get. But I'm also glad for all the games that we get now. Like Ghost of Tsushima is one of my favorite games of all time. And Baldur's Gate 3, which I made an entire video on, you can go watch it.
I think really, like, the problem now is that so much of the, like, gaming conversation is dominated by the games that are really bad. Like, for example, people are talking about Suicide Squad all the time.
I thought this thing has more range.
Like the new Assassin's Creed game, or like a few of these other, like, popular to hate games. But the truth is that now we have so many really popular and really good games coming out all the time that, like, people are getting effectively, like, fucking fatigued from it. Like, you're having good games come out constantly. And now it's Concord. Yeah, now Concord is the bad game. Do you think the best-selling online store ruined the game industry? You're asking me, like, do I think that, like, having a store in the game ruined it? Not really. I mean, I think that... I do think that having a store inside of the game does hurt immersion a lot, but I don't think that's the real reason why it happened. Every streamer that played the graphics exposition Hellblade was like, what the fuck is this bullshit? Yeah, and I mean, like, you're probably going to see that studio have to announce their closing because of that. That's just the way it is.
Phenomenal experience. Compare that to the PS2 Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2, and it's no contest. The only reason I might want to pick up and play Dark Alliance 2 is because I miss playing it with my dad when I was a kid. I used to live in this big green field right on the corner lot. Baseball fields right across the street. I think the house used to be a church. Definitely hard. I was 8 years old when that house caught fire. I remember I was watching SpongeBob and I walked into the kitchen and I saw these crazy things all over. Long story short, the house got completely ruined. And my dad got
What the fuck?
He recovered
What
fine.
the
He just took
fuck?
some skin from his butt and put it on his hand. I call it his butt.
That's
hand.
a
His
nuke.
house though was mostly ruined. And the property had a separate garage, like a barn kind of thing. And that garage had an attic. Well, my dad decided that we were gonna fix up the house ourselves and live up in that attic. Him and I shared this airbed up there, and right next to it was a projector that I had hooked up my PlayStation 2 and my original Xbox to. During the day, I'd obviously go to school, and then when I got home, I'd help him build however I could. You know, there wasn't much I could do. I was 8, but I remember doing things like helping him put up the ceiling or chip away at the old stone slate in the fireplace. And when we were done for the day, I would go up and play on that PS2 non-stop. Not to get into too much detail, I'm just some guy on the internet. You don't know me. But
Yeah, I think everybody has like a story like that. You know, like there's like their version of this.
I was having a hard time. Something about swinging around the city just made it all melt. I wasn't exactly with all this stress. Problems I didn't understand. I can only imagine how my dad was. He always seemed happy. When I would play with him, just watching him. We had a ton of fun. Just laugh, hang out, play Halo 2.
Yep.
It was in moments like that where it really felt like everything.
But like that's a W, Dad, because like if you're playing Halo 2 with your 8-year-old kid and you're doing campaign co-op, remember whenever you'd have your teammate die and then you have to restart the match? Bro, his dad didn't mauled out on him, probably dying 50 fucking times in the game. Think about that. That's a W, Dad, yeah. That's crazy.
It didn't feel like we had just lost everything. It felt like we had everything that we could ever need. And it's funny, now sometimes just hearing that PS2 sound, I'm back up in the attic with my dad. Nostalgia's a funny thing that can make you look back fondly on things that might not have been so great.
I haven't thought about this map
Somehow
in 20 fucking years.
in their own way. And escapism through simple pleasures like video games will
Holy shit.
always be important. I
Yeah.
think we all have that game or just media in general that was able to give us a break from a hard time in our lives and made us hold on to that experience forever. And so now we judge that media by what it did for us rather than what it actually is. I'd love to hear if there was anything like that that stuck with you, either in a comment or
Yeah, I have a lot of games like that. I feel like it's extremely common, and like that's why I think a lot of people play video games is like for escapism and shit like that. It's like there's probably a lot of games that like you have different memories for like different reasons, etc. And I feel like that's always been like one of the big draws. And I think that also, if you want to enjoy games more, I think that you should really like. A lot of people go and they overanalyze video games before they play them, and then I think that overanalysis makes them playing the game not feel as good. Because they're like constantly thinking about all this stuff that they read about it, and it's like, oh, well, they didn't like this part, etc. Where it's like, if you just play the game, it's like an unironic ignorance is bliss situation, where if you're just playing the game for the simple enjoyment of the game, rather than like trying to like think about how good it is or anything like that, just take a step back and try to just enjoy the experience.
I was dodging.
I think that you will get more out of the game. Just play it first. Yeah, exactly.
Get back to you, but if you want to, give me an email. I might
Yep.
see it. Thank you so much for over 100,000 subscribers. Geek really likes the plaque, so that's good. We send it off to him. He's the real hero here. 100K is crazy. You know, I started another channel a while ago, and it took me so long. I was trying so hard to get to 100K. And with this one, I wasn't even trying. I just kind of did it. I mean,
this is a really good video.
That shit's cool. This is a cool thing to do. This is my simple pleasure now. So please simply click the card right here and watch another video. This got way too sappy. Click on some other funny shit, please. Okay, goodbye.
I'm gonna be honest. I actually think this guy had like a lot of like really good points in this game, in this video. Like this is actually a really good. This is a really good video. I think that nostalgia plays a really big part into why people look back on like these games fondly. And I think if people started remaking the movie games and stuff like that, everybody would just call it a soulless cash grab. So it's not like it's like 100%, but I feel like some of the points that you bring up are like 100% relevant. Nostalgia is the entire reason. I don't really think that it's the entire reason. I think that a lot of people are fatigued from games that seem like they focus on things that gamers don't care about. And I think that's really where the frustration comes from. It's like you're looking at this game, you're excited for this game, and then it's like, okay, this is pretty much all the same shit that was already there. If it's not, then why do kids go back? Wow, why don't? If it's not, then why don't kids go back and play these games? Well, because they're products of their time, right? I mean, like, for example, there's a lot of things that you're not going to really go back and do. Like, I bet kids nowadays probably aren't growing up watching Lord of the Rings because they have their own movies now that are part of like their own new culture that they have. And like, that's just what happens, right? It's the same as like Ben-Hur, like, or the Ten Commandments. Like, you know, my parents grew up watching those movies. Now I don't really grow up watching them. It doesn't mean the movies were bad. It just means that like they were a product of a different time. So I don't think that necessarily means it. And I think that like you have other games that are similar to that. Like, as I said, Another Crab's Treasure, stuff like that, that still have the same vibe even now. But yeah, that was a really good video. I'm actually going to read some of the comments on this. I've never seen this guy's channel before, so yeah, this is really good. Memories are only good if they're profitable.
Wait, she's untargetable by doing this? Yeah, come on, man.
Nostalgia so hard. Yeah, man. Story about you and Dad was really special. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, everybody's gonna have a lot of stories for like kind of like playing video games, like their parents maybe. Like for me, it was with my mom a lot. Like I would play a lot of games with her. And yeah, absolutely. I have so many of those fucking stories, man. Blizzard is worse than you thought. Oh boy, here we go. Somebody said apparently I'm even in the video. Uh-oh.
The year is 2023, and a once beloved game developer's reputation is in absolute freefall.
Yep.
What was at one point probably the highest rated developer in the industry, a studio that pumps out classic after classic,
holy shit,
has now become the home of incomprehensible horror. Corporate greed, broken promises, botched releases, stolen presents. This is the story of Blizzard.
Remember the logo? Remember that?
The year is
like
1991, and three guys have just graduated from the University of California.
Damn.
Alan Hacker, Michael Morhaime, and Frank Lewis. They get together to
this guy was at the company until like a couple months ago.
Called Silicon and Synapse. The name is TP for the soft bullet where we went out, with Silicon representing the building block of a computer, and Synapse the building block of a brain. However, people mistaking the Silicon part for the material in the rest of them. Anyway, they spent the first few years porting games to different systems, but soon begin producing their own original games, with The Lost Vikings in 1992
I had this one.
and Rock and Roll Racing in 1993.
I did not have this one.
Eventually, they get sick of constantly being mixed up with women's breasts, so they decide to switch things up, changing their name to Chaos Studios.
Bro, it's fucking me over,
the company
man.
based in Florida already has a trademark, and they're now asking for $100,000.
Jesus.
I
They
deal
then
no
decide to
damage.
change the studio's name to Ogre Studios. But in 1994, they're acquired by a holding company for a few $1 million. And turns out, their new owners aren't a fan of the new name. Okay. So they flip through a dictionary, and oh my god, there it is. In 1994, Blizzard releases their first self-published title, a real-time strategy game called Warcraft Orcs and Humans.
I didn't start with Warcraft 1. I never actually played Warcraft 1 either. I only played Warcraft 2 onward.
And it's an instant success.
Yeah.
It's one of the earliest real-time strategy games to hit shelves, and it's a blast.
Yep, you would go to Serpent City and it would be there.
Multiplayer, meaning people can get together and go ham. And the game does well, selling 100,000 copies in the first year. For the first time, Blizzard Entertainment was profitable. They follow it up with Warcraft 2 in 1995.
Bro, this game was so fucking good. This right here, this was the main computer game that I played as a kid. This was my game.
It's another critically acclaimed, and now selling over 1 million copies in its first
No
year.
surprise.
It's now 1996, and a company called Condor Games is looking for a publisher for their nearly complete game.
Yeah.
Blizzard has a little look, and so they buy them and rename them Blizzard World. It's also at this point that Blizzard notices something. Warcraft 2 have picked up a lasting online player base, mostly through third-party networks that connected players over this magic new thing called the internet.
Yep.
So they decide to make their own
Battle.net. Yep.
Its original functionality is very
Remember
simple.
whenever Blizzard tried to change the name of Battle.net to like Blizzard Network or something like that, and like everybody was like, no, let's go back to Battle.net. And then they're like, oh, okay. And then they had to change it back.
With the ability for players to chat to each other.
Blizzard Launcher, yeah, it's Battle.net,
on December
okay?
31st, 1996. It launches alongside Diablo, and people log on and play it. Diablo is a massive hit, also selling over 1 million copies within its first year. In 1998, Blizzard launches StarCraft, an RTS set in space.
It's actually crazy how StarCraft came out in 1998 and people are still playing Brood War regularly. That is fucking insane.
It sells bigly.
I had StarCraft as well.
Diablo 2 launches in 2000.
This was the big one.
It reaches almost 3 million sales by the end of the year.
This was crazy.
The fastest
Bro, like they had Diablo 2 boxes at like Walmart until like 2008, 2010. Like this game was so big for so long.
selling PC game at the time. In 2002, Warcraft is back.
Oh,
now it has an extra dimension. Warcraft 3 sells 1 million units in just 1 month.
Well, like, what's so crazy about Warcraft 3 is that, like, you might not really think about this, but, like, back then, the graphics for Warcraft 3 were beyond next level. They were so ridiculously fucking good. I remember playing Warcraft 3 on my mom's laptop, and it would take me, like, an hour just to get through, like, one cinematic. Because of how in-depth and, like, how groundbreaking graphics
was really becoming the new fastest selling PC game. It also releases with a campaign editor, which spawns a series of popular ones like Offensive.
Yep.
And after its expansion in 2003, it's all hands on deck for Blizzard's next.
Yep. I remember, so whenever my dad, like, started, like, because he was, like, finally in, like, 2000 and, like, I would say, like, 2002, somewhere around there, he was like, okay, I've really got to get a PC at home. Because, like, at this point, he was
Time to die.
a publishing company, and, like, he needed to be able to have email and work from home, right? So him and his friend Randy got together and collectively spent the most amount of money possible on a PC. And he was asking me about the PC, and he was like, yeah, we're thinking about getting this one. Like, what do you think? And I, like, looked at it, and I then thought about, like, what the Warcraft 3 specs were, and I was like, yeah, I think you're gonna need that one. Yeah, that's definitely the one you need. And then as soon as he bought the PC, I took Warcraft 3 over to his house, and I remember I would come over there all the time. He would actually get pissed because I was just sitting there farming Warcraft 3. I was playing that shit constantly. It was amazing.
The year is 2004, and Blizzard are getting ready to release its biggest game yet.
Yep.
They'd seen how big MMOs like EverQuest were getting, and thought they'd try their hand. And after $60 million and 5 years of work, it's finally nearing release. And in November 2004, World of Warcraft launches.
You've got to really keep in mind, like, what a run that was. From, like, Diablo 1, from, like, Warcraft 2 to Diablo 1 to Warcraft 2 to Diablo 2 to StarCraft. Maybe StarCraft was before Diablo 2, I don't remember. And then Brood War. And then you had Warcraft 3 and then World of Warcraft. Which, again, like, World of Warcraft, like, the graphics for the game were... I'm trying to think of a game that, like, kind of had graphics that were that good for that time. It was just, like, the graphics were totally fucking groundbreaking. They were insane.
And it takes the world by storm, smashing even Blizzard's forecasts.
Yep.
There are so many players trying to log on in the first week that their servers have a complete meltdown, with server queues reaching the thousands.
Oh, yeah.
Get past the queues and actually into a game. Well, now you're greeted with a ton of latency issues and a probable disconnection, meaning you're now back.
Ooh.
Oh, I remember that.
After the initial server problems arise, people can actually The game sucks people in en masse.
Yep.
Fans are very enthusiastic. It hoovers up awards.
You know what? I think we're going to respec, man. We go to
It was
respec.
the game,
Reaching
man.
almost 6 million sales. by
We
the
are
end of its
gonna
first year.
respec.
Think about that. 6 million fucking
World of
people.
Warcraft isn't like your average game though. Instead of simply buying a copy, players have to pay a $15 monthly subscription fee to play.
And you got to keep in mind, $15 in 2004, 2005, 2006, that's like $30 now. It was huge.
6 million
It's a
times
lot of
15
money.
every month.
Yeah.
And Blizzard isn't doing too badly. Everyone is playing the game.
We're gonna
And
respec.
its ads go on to feature a ton of celebrities.
I'm Chuck Norris, and I approve this game.
And others like Vin Diesel, William
Yep.
Shatner, Henry Cavill, Mila Kunis, and Dave Chappelle announced their addictions in various interviews.
Yep.
World of Warcraft is everywhere. World of Warcraft would also result in the launch of BlizzCon in 2005, a massive
Well,
annual...
BlizzCon always was basically, like, I always viewed BlizzCon as, like, BlizzCon is really just the place where, like, Warcraft people meet up with, like, their guilds. I feel like that's, like, whenever you go to BlizzCon, you see most of the people there from World of Warcraft.
convention that would feature big musical acts and announcements for Blizzard's future games.
Oh,
Fans could
Diablo
also
3.
ask the devs questions, and were sometimes even featured. At this
7
point,
and 2
Blizzard
8.
is among the all-time greats of gaming. Every game
Oh, yeah.
a smash hit. They
Absolutely.
could do no wrong.
To be fair, though, even in vanilla WoW, people thought the game was garbage. Like, there were always doom and gloomers. Even in vanilla WoW and Burning Crusade, there were always doom and gloomers.
But first, flying a plane is easy. Just get in, flip a few switches, and you're off.
I thought that was going to be footage of something else.
But in War Thunder,
Yeah.
it's even easier. And a ton of fun. Jump into intense PvP that takes you from the ground to the
Yeah,
sea,
because remember that
all the
one
way to
time,
the
yeah.
skies. In fact, War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game of all time. Just look at all
That's-
those things. There's more than 2,000 of them. Someone
When are
that
they
likes
gonna
to
add
small and
Armored
agile,
Core into
or a
this
fan of the
game?
more voluptuous. Well,
Yeah.
War Thunder has
Give me
something.
my
The
McDonald's
game is
tank from Armored Core
with
6.
a dynamic damage system that damages individual components and a huge customization system. Hundreds of camos, historical emblems, and over a century of
Correct.
vehicles to pick from. And their
Just what I
model,
wanted.
painstakingly detailed to 100% accuracy, which you can enjoy in gorgeous 4K graphics. And you can play on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC for free. Fancy a
Damn.
large bonus pack with all this stuff? Just sign up through the link in the description or the pinned comments below.
Wow. I actually wanted to try War Thunder after they had that one drama thing happen. I might play it one day. It'd be a game that if like I got a sponsor for this, I would play it.
The year is now 2006. World of Warcraft has almost 10
Very
million
good year.
active subscribers and is bringing in a ton of money. So naturally, it had turned a few heads.
Uh-huh.
One of those heads, Bobby Kotick, CEO of Activision. Now in 2006, Activision had made good tracks in just about every genre of games.
Yeah.
Except one. And one that was now booming.
Online game.
The MMO.
Yeah.
With Warcraft currently bringing in over $1 billion a year in subscriptions alone, he's interested. Now at this point,
wonder why.
Blizzard has changed hands numerous times, and is now owned by a company called Vivendi. So Kotick approaches Vivendi with a proposition. Vivendi receives money, Activision receives Blizzard. However,
Simple.
Vivendi says no.
Ooh.
Instead, Vivendi offers to merge their gaming subdivision with Activision, with Vivendi owning a majority share in the resulting company.
Damn.
And after a
Good
brief
for them.
hesitation from Kotick, in 2008, the deal closes.
I want to let you guys know less than a year after this deal closed was whenever they added the first store mount into the game.
Activision Blizzard opens its doors with Kotick
Yeah.
as CEO, and Activision and Blizzard, now its two subsidiaries.
Yeah, I remember
Blizzard
thinking to
would
myself,
supposedly retain most of its autonomy and keep their CEO, co-founder Michael Morhaime.
yep.
It's now 2010, and Blizzard has gone from just under 500 employees before the launch of World of Warcraft to now over 4,600. The majority of whom are preparing for the launch of StarCraft 2 in July. And the third
because StarCraft 2 went so hard. Like, I don't think a lot of you guys remember, but like in 2010, StarCraft 2 was like the esport.
Oh.
Like, that's what it was all about. It was so fucking big. It's like, I think that it had the biggest fall off of any esport that I've ever seen.
The Warcraft expansion
because it was so huge
in December. Now these launches were not small. Warcraft had been hitting peak after peak of players and was now at 12 million monthly subscribers. And StarCraft 2's sales projections are also sizable.
That's a lot.
But Blizzard currently has a problem. Their forums. They're a little bit toxic.
Ooh.
Blizzard has a big team of moderators,
the real ID
but
thing.
according to them, this still wasn't enough. So behind the scenes, they get brainstorming. And someone has a brilliant idea. How about we just force everyone that posts on our forums to use their real first and last name?
Scotty!
Smart.
And in July 2010, Real ID is
I remember this drama happened whenever I was raiding ICC. Yeah.
And people
were really mad about this.
So in an attempt to sell the idea to players, Blizzard's community manager posts his full name on the forum. See guys, it's fine. But almost instantly, people descend on the forum and get to work. And within mere minutes, they find and publish his home address, phone number, age, Facebook, family names, and a list of his favorite music and movies. Okay, you know what? Fair enough. And after just a few days of being announced, Real ID is scrapped entirely.
Which, to be fair, it was very stupid for Blizzard to have done that. But they took the feedback, they said, wait a minute guys, I think we fucked up with this. We're gonna change it back.
By 2009, the Warcraft 3 mod Defense of the Ancients had gained a significant following, and had even spawned a whole new genre of games, MOBAs. For much of that time, Blizzard had paid little attention to the mod or the game, but the success of the recently launched League of Legends could no longer be ignored, and Blizzard finally steps in.
Oh shit.
What is she saying?
Long ago, Queen Marika commanded Sir Messmer to purge the Tower folk. A cleansing by fire. It's no wonder the Hornsent holds the Erdtree in contempt. That aside, man is by nature a creep, and in this regard, the Tower folk are no different. They were never saints. They just happened to be on the losing side of but it's still a wretched shame. Wondering about the Hornsent? True enough. In any other circumstance, he'd be at our throat. Long ago, Queen Marika, a cleansing by. It's no wonder the Hornsent. That aside. Man, and in this they will never say just happened to be on, but it's still a wretched.
Can I touch the cross? No. Fuck you, controller. I wanna go down. Wait, was I down here? I don't know. No, I wasn't. I'll go exploring.
Starting work on their take on the genre, titled Blizzard Dota. Around the same time, and Valve wants to make their own MOBA. They'd hired the head dev of the original Dota mod, snapped up the Dota trademark, and they're calling their new game Dota 2.
Damn.
Blizzard is furious.
Yeah, they tried to shut him down.
So in 2012, they file a statement of opposition, arguing that the name Defense of the Ancients was associated exclusively with Warcraft due to it being made in their map editor. However, this argument has issues. See, the mod was created in Warcraft 3's map editor, but that map editor had no specific terms and conditions on ownership of said maps, IP, and concepts.
That's why whenever Blizzard made Warcraft 3 Reforged, they added that into the legal text that you have to accept. Yeah, they changed the legal text because of this. Because they lost this copyright.
Valve getting the commercial rights to the term Dota, and Dota 2 releases in 2012. It's massively successful.
Oh yeah.
It goes on to be an esports giant. Blizzard gets non-commercial use of the title for its community and renames Blizzard Dota to Heroes of the Storm, which releases in 2015 and supports Scan 3 years later. Blizzard would change its licensing agreements for all future games to include their ownership of player-created maps in an attempt to avoid this ever happening again.
Yeah, they never want that to happen. Because, like, think about how much money they lost on that.
It's 2012, and the massively anticipated sequel to Diablo 2 is looking like it's releasing this year. Its development had been a bit rocky, with its dev team, Blizzard
And you
North.
also have to keep in mind that, like, at this time, so, like, Diablo 3 came out in, like, I think May of 2011? No, it was May of 2012. Yeah, it came out May 2012. Because, like, that was during Dragon Soul. And whenever I was raiding Dragon Soul, I remember, like, everybody said, like, the week that Diablo came out, you had to still come to the raid, and I didn't go to the raid. Because I was playing Diablo 3, and I was like, I'm an officer, I don't have to follow the rules. And I do the best DPS in the guild, I don't have to follow the rules. And so I didn't. And so, yeah, that happened, and that's again why everybody was happy whenever I stopped raiding. And so, that's what it was. And at that time, people were actually pretty negative about WoW, and they were very unhappy about it. And one of the big reasons why Diablo 3 did so well and it was so big is that Blizzard thought of something at the time. It was called the annual pass. And you would like agree to pay for a WoW sub for a year. And if you did that, they give you the Tyrael's charger amount and they would give you Diablo 3 for free. So that's like one of the big reasons why Diablo 3 was so big. Yeah, the annual pass.
Being canned in 2005, along with their version of the game, but on the 15th of May 2012, the rebooted Diablo 3. The game is horrendous. For one, its launch is horrific. The game is online
Error 37.
only. It turns out there are massive server issues.
Yeah.
People are spamming their login details over and over, only to be kicked out by Error 37. What's worse, there's no queue system in place, so you have to manually retry it every minute.
Yep.
This issue takes over a week to fix. Then there's the auction house. Here, loot can be bought.
Well,
I think that
that's not good.
Like the problems with Diablo 3 were a lot, like just in terms of the way the game played, and the game was really buggy. Just straight up problems with the game. I don't think that people had a problem with the Real Money Auction House at all, because people had D2 JSP and they were buying and selling stuff in Diablo 2 for real money for years. So I actually don't think the Real Money Auction House had any real factor in damaging the game. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but that's genuinely what my opinion is.
And sold using your mum's credit card.
Can I parry this
Blizzard
fucker?
gets filthy rich, while the balancing gets obliterated.
I mean, that's gonna be difficult if I can parry him.
Essentially non-existent. However, the game sells almost 4 million copies in its first 24 hours.
Well, it's not that the end game content was non-existent. It's that doing runs through Inferno mode was like basically impossible for all but like 2 classes. And like I remember I leveled up a Barbarian. And like I just got one shot by the mobs in Inferno mode. Like I didn't even have a chance. And then I played a Demon Hunter, and it was just like I cleared the entire thing.
I used this one.
Nothing. It was not even a big deal at all.
And over time,
yeah, but he took a
slowly
long
makes
time
a
gearing.
turnaround. In 2014, the Real Money Auction House is closed, and Blizzard launches Reaper of Souls, an add-on praised almost unanimously.
My understanding for why they removed the Real Money Auction House was actually because of regulation issues. Because like they were basically creating a currency trading service because you were able to buy and sell gold on the Real Money Auction House, and by doing that you opened yourself up to like certain types of regulation. So it was a legal reason why they got rid of it. That was my understanding. I could be wrong though. And by the way, I think Reaper of Souls in a lot of cases was actually a downgrade from the original Diablo. This is probably one of my most unpopular Diablo opinions, but I think Reaper of Souls made the game worse.
I can't parry him.
They're ready to make a
You know
second
what?
add-on to the game.
It removed trading.
Do I care? Should I care?
It removed trading, and it removed the deterministic way that you could work towards gear through buying gold, and sorry, through buying the gear on the auction.
But management says no. Apparently, executives see the game as a massive failure and demand devs change. The year is now 2015.
And also, Reaper of Souls like did well for a while, but it did also fall off pretty fast as well, because people just didn't really like the seasonal aspect of it as much. I think that's kind of like what ended up happening, because I remember watching Quinn in like season 4 of Diablo 3, and then there was a reason why Quinn moved over to playing PoE and playing other games, because Quinn was originally a Diablo only streamer, and then I remember Quinn moved over to playing World of Warcraft, and like sometimes it was like WoD, but I know he was playing a lot of WoW on stream in Legion, because I remember watching Quinn do the Mage Tower. And I remember thinking, this guy sucks. I'm gonna go live at night, right?
How can I kill this guy? Holy shit.
And then I wiped on it for 2 hours because I kept choking on stream.
How can I kill this guy?
Past 10 years have seen massive expansions to Warcraft, including controversial changes to the game and its mechanics, and player numbers.
Maybe I need a hammer.
Now being in steep decline. A growing number
and also like this completely like I
maybe
think
he's
this video
weak
totally,
to
like glosses
bonk.
over are they talking about WoD? Yeah, I guess they will. Like, Warlords of Draenor was like a massive fucking failure. It was insane how bad it was, especially compared to like Mists of Pandaria was kind of a miss in terms of like theme. Like, I think Mists of Pandaria, like, if Warlords of Draenor had come out with the amount of content that Mists of Pandaria had, it would be considered the best expansion ever. The problem was that the theme for the expansion was fucking stupid. Pandas? Get the fuck out of here. What the fuck are you talking about? Pandas and feelings and shahs and
I never hit his crystal
like,
so far.
what the fuck is this?
What the
Let's
fuck?
go back to killing people. Like, remember whenever orcs killed humans and humans killed orcs? Let's just do that again. That's it. It's so fucking stupid.
Players long to go back to the days of vanilla.
That's why people got so hard over the
Oh, now it works.
WoD trailer.
One fan even floats the idea to Blizzard themselves at BlizzCon.
Yeah.
Okay, it is bonk.
Here's how that goes.
Have you ever thought about adding servers for previous expansions as they were then?
No.
Okay then, we'll just make one ourselves.
No.
And the fan-made Astarius vanilla server goes online in February 2015, running version 1.12, a month after the original launch. It's not long before the server gets massively popular.
Which again,
holy
it became
shit,
massively
man.
popular because this was during Warlords of Draenor.
That was way too hard.
And there was nothing to do in the game because of how bad WoD was. Like, for anybody who says that any expansion was like Shadowlands was worse than WoD, there has never been an expansion that was as bad as Warlords of Draenor. Like, it was such a massive fucking failure in like 50 different ways. Like BFA was amazing compared to WoD. You are insane if you actually think that BFA was worse than WoD. It was not even close.
Almost 1 million accounts registered. It's also not long before Blizzard catches wind and brings the hammer down.
Yeah.
Their lawyers sent them a cease and desist in 2016, and the server is promptly shut down.
Offer healing?
Realizing they were
bitch.
completely wrong about vanilla Warcraft, Blizzard do a full 180 and announce Warcraft Classic in
I was there.
2017. Back in 2007, Blizzard started work on a huge MMO called Project Titan. It was described as a combination of Left 4 Dead, Team Fortress, and The Sims. But development led nowhere, and 6 years later, the plug is pulled. A massive failure on Blizzard's part, and a major internal embarrassment.
Well, it wasn't really a massive failure because my understanding is that they converted Titan over to Overwatch. So it was like, it's okay.
However, the team behind it would attempt to rework the remains of the story and assets into another project. And in 2016, Overwatch hits shelves. And it's amazing. It's
People loved
critically
it.
acclaimed across the board and massively popular.
Especially
quickly
on other
becoming one of the
websites.
most popular esports titles on the market.
Yep.
That, Paired with their genre-pioneering card game Hearthstone back in 2014 that now has almost 100 million players. And Blizzard is looking
Yeah,
strong.
Hearthstone was actually a really popular game, like for a long time. I remember this girl I would play WoW with a lot, Cora. She would constantly try to get me to play Hearthstone with her. And I was like, why the fuck would I play Hearthstone if I can just go to the card shop and play Magic the Gathering? Like, I don't get this. Like, why would I? What the fuck?
Wow.
Like, what?
Because it just assumes that Magic the Gathering is
there are
better than
problems brewing.
Hearthstone.
See,
I can go to a
Overwatch was
draft.
the last big game that had in the pipeline for a while.
Yeah.
And they realized they don't have much to show off for BlizzCon 2018. So Blizzard rushes to find something to show off. Got it. Fast forward to November 2018, and their presentation is ready to go. They sprinkle a few niche announcements here and there, like a remastered Warcraft 3, but they have one big announcement centerpiece. After 6 long years, a brand new Diablo.
You know what? So 2017 BlizzCon, I remember after Classic WoW got announced, it was the first time that I met Soda Poppin'. And Chance walks in the doors of the Hilton Hotel, and this is whenever he still had the pink hair. It was right after they had announced Classic WoW, and we hugged each other, and we were like, it's fucking happened. Like, we did it, man. Because this is after, like, he had made his video that was really popular. Mark Kern took all the names to the Blizzard headquarters, and like I had made a video, everybody was making videos, and like it finally fucking happened. Like, you have no idea how, like, what a cathartic experience it was whenever they fucking said, you know, Classic WoW is actually gonna happen. Like, oh my god, man, that was so awesome. I was so happy. And so that did happen. Then 2018, I wasn't even really planning on going to BlizzCon because the only reason I went to 2017 was I did Allcraft there. And they like paid for me to go and set everything up. And so I was like, okay, fine, whatever, I'll go. But that was whenever I first started dating Izzy, Pink Sparkles. And she was like, okay, you know, you're gonna go to BlizzCon so we can meet. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do that. So to be honest with you guys, I only went to BlizzCon 2018 to meet her. And I didn't even see this happen live. I was busy. I have no idea. I had no idea this shit happened until like hours later. And like I made a tweet about it, like, oh, Diablo Immortal bad. And it's like, yeah, that was it.
For mobile.
Yeah, I didn't even give a fuck.
I played the mobile game that has nothing to do.
Yeah, I'm amazed, honestly. It's this bad. This is fucking insane. I don't even know like what to even say about this.
I was wondering, is this an out of season April Fool's joke?
We don't have any plans at the moment to do.
Well, they did do it, to be fair.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
The game eventually launches, and it's bad. Firstly, it's not even developed by Blizzard, but their Chinese partner NetEase. It turns out...
That's one of the really big factors that I wish more people would understand about Diablo Immortal, is that Diablo Immortal did not fail because it was pay to win. Diablo Immortal failed because it was bad. That's the real reason. Had nothing to do with the quality of the game.
It's monetized.
Or sorry, it had everything to do with the quality of the game, not the monetization at all. It was a fundamentally bad game.
It costs over $500,000 to max out a single character, and becomes the worst rated game
for one season
ever on Metacritic.
Yeah.
By 2018, fans are noticing something. Activision Blizzard had been creeping, and Blizzard was changing. See, back in 2013, Activision had bought back the remaining Vivendi shares for about $7 billion.
That's a lot.
Meaning they, and by extension, Bobby Kotick, now had complete control of both Activision and Blizzard. Fast forward to 2018, and this creeping had only gotten worse. Because of the slowdown...
I tried to tell people, bro, I really tried. I tried so hard. I was like, guys, they're adding in store mounts, they're adding in level boosts, like you have to guys,
Lever?
please, like, say this is bad. And they're like, no, it's good, it's okay, it's fine. And then they add in the WoW token, they're like, oh, that's good, they're adding in the WoW token. I said, guys, it's not good. And they said, no, it is good. And I tried to fucking say it, man, and nobody wanted to listen. I even poured salt on my head, I did. I was furious.
Oh,
Nobody
lever.
took it seriously except for me. And Total Biscuit and a handful of other people. But overall, the spender's gonna spend, yep.
In game releases, Blizzard's revenues are taking an absolute nosedive. So Active Blizzard steps in. It pushes the company to cut costs and gets them to produce games at a faster pace.
Of course.
With Kotick apparently installing his own executives within Blizzard to ensure that happens. Apparently, tired of Active Blizzard's meddling, Blizzard co-founder Mike Morhaime steps down as president and CEO and leaves the company after 27 years of work. He's succeeded by Warcraft's executive producer, J. Allen Brack. This guy.
And by the way, you don't want that.
I still think it is so fucking funny that whenever Mike, because I did the math on this, and apparently Blizzard was made aware of the California investigation for all of the sexual assault stuff about 6 months after Mike Morhaime left, and J. Allen Brack less than 6 months actually. This dude basically inherited a sinking ship. And I remember, because like, look at this, this was 2014, and you can see videos of him in like 2018 and 17 with all brown hair. And then 2 years. It's all gray. All gray, yeah, gray, yeah, white hair in like 8 months, bro. He aged 30 years in 2 years, yeah. Bro, I mean, the guy's a fucking asshole, right? But I do kind of feel bad for him in a way. Because he really inherited a big fuck up.
Do that, either. You think you do, but you don't.
And as soon as this happens, we accelerate. The company immediately prioritizes cutting costs, and the Heroes of the Storm's development team is outright annihilated.
Keep in mind that whenever the Heroes of the Storm game was announced that they just basically like gave up on it, people were generally happy because nobody actually liked the game. Nobody was playing the game. It was a dead game. It was a totally fucking dead game.
Sports League is also scrapped right before its 2019 season. As a result, entire teams, commentators, and support staff are suddenly left jobless.
Yeah.
And despite 2018 being a record...
It's not true, though. It actually is true. Like, if you go and you look at the amount of people that were actually consuming content and watching the tournaments and watching any event that had anything to do with Heroes of the Storm, and you compared it to Dota 2 or League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm had less than 5% of the market share. Like, it was a totally dead game in the market. It made no actual impact in the market. It didn't really bring people over from Dota or to League. It was nice as like I played it too. I got to rank 1 in the game
I'm here again.
on like the beta, which like that doesn't really mean a lot, but like I was decent at it, right? I played Nova, Zeratul, Anubarak, and I think Muradin too a little bit, and I played Vala also, and it was a fun game. But the truth is that yeah, nobody gave a fuck about the game. That's the truth. Nobody gave a fuck about it.
For Active Blizzard profits, they lay off 800 employees, almost 10%.
The numbers, hey, the numbers speak for themselves.
They begin rehiring the exact same jobs a couple of years later. So going into 2019, people are not happy. But turns out, over on the other side of the world, and things are happening in Hong Kong, they're not good. Their government has proposed a bill that would give China more authority over them. And that's not too popular.
People didn't like that.
At the same time,
just beat 'em with
Hong Kong
police.
native Blitz Chung is participating in Hearthstone's esports league.
Yep.
He wins and uses the post-game interview to show his support for the protests. But as soon as he says it, something happens. See, Blizzard has a huge player base in China, and to keep that player base available to them, they have to bend over backwards for the Chinese government.
Yeah.
So when this happens, they go scorched earth. They take the live stream down seconds after he says it, slap him with a year-long ban, and even confiscate his prize money. Even the guys casting the stream are fired. It's not long before the internet catches wind, and people are furious.
Oh yeah, and people were really, really, really mad about this. They were absolutely furious about it because it was just like, yeah, it was awful. Taking his money as fuck.
At
Yeah,
one
it was
point,
crazy.
even Congress members have a go. After a few days of pressure, J. Allen Brack eventually comes out. He reduces the ban to half a year and grants Blitzchung his prize money back. He also says that Blizzard's relationships with China had no influence on their decision.
Of course not.
Blizzard is starting to look
Of course
seriously
not.
not cool. So they decide to go into BlizzCon 2019 with the big guns, announcing Diablo 4 and...
Which, by the way, I mean, by the time BlizzCon 2019 happened, people, like, generally, like, again, all of these, like, social issues, like the sexual harassment stuff, the Blitzchung stuff, the Hong Kong stuff, all of these things were all basically irrelevant compared to the fact that the game was problematic. That was the real issue. The games were bad.
Watch 2. Also, that Warcraft remaster they'd announced at the infamous
I remember
2018
McConnell and I
BlizzCon
watched this
coming
live.
out next year.
On
is
stream.
good.
This was fucking awesome.
Back in 2015, Blizzard had set up a subdivision to remaster old games, the first of which would be Warcraft 3. And in January 2020, the highly anticipated remaster launches. And, oh boy, the game is beyond terrible. Here's why. Before launch, Warcraft 3's advertising...
They had another company make the game.
...touted multiple new features. Over 4 hours of cinematic new cutscenes, more story, and new voice acting. A complete campaign overhaul, changing the story to be more in line with the current Warcraft lore. But when players log on, turns out absolutely none of this is in the game. This is after being advertised on the website for over a year.
Do you remember whenever they had the tournament for Warcraft 3 Reforged and then the game crashed 2 times in the middle of a match and they had to restart it 3 times?
Liar! There's also a ton of features from the original Warcraft 3 just outright missing.
Yeah.
Here are a few of them. No ranked play?
No.
No profiles?
No.
No account stats?
No.
No custom campaign?
No.
No clans?
No.
No cross-region play for custom games?
Why would they do that?
No.
And no offline play?
No.
It's possible after a
See,
few...
like, Warcraft 3 is one of those games where it's like, I have no problem with a game like Diablo 4 being always online because of just, like, the nature of what the game is. But there is no reason that Warcraft 3 Reforged needed to be always online. There's literally no reason. It's totally unjustifiable. It's like making Elden Ring offline. Or online only. Reforged is just a nerf? Yeah, exactly. Like, as I said, bro, like, y'all might not remember this, but before Warcraft 3 Reforged came out, everybody wanted Reforging to come back in WoW. After this game got released, nobody ever asked for Reforging ever again. That ended it. The game was so bad, it actually changed what people wanted in WoW. They said, please do not reforge anything in this fucking game. We've seen what you do.
Patches, but it's a little complicated. Also, after some digging, people realize the main menu background is actually a Chrome-based web app, and is taking up more of your CPU power than the actual game. Online matchmaking sucks and kicks you out all the time. This is without a way to reconnect, by the way.
Of course.
Graphics are worse than advertised.
Treason! Have you lost your mind, Arthas?
The new art direction is bad. 5 of the game's maps are exactly the same.
I thought the art for the game was trash.
As the original. And poor optimization, tons of crashes, and countless bugs. On top of all of that, Reforged is a mandatory update for everyone with the original game. Own the original with no intention of upgrading.
Too bad.
Well, here's an additional 30 gigabytes of install size anyway. All of this amounts to one of the worst launches of a game in history. Within a few days of release, it ends up at 0.5 out of 10 on Metacritic. At the time,
really
the
bad.
lowest Metacritic score in history.
Until the next time it gets beaten by their other games. Like, you'll see that Blizzard used to hit records for best-selling games. Now they hit records for worst reviewed games of all time.
dethroned by Diablo Immortal.
That then got dethroned by Overwatch 2.
People pile in to request refunds.
Uh-huh.
You booted up the game even just once.
You're not getting your money back.
You're not allowed. There's so much outcry about the game, however, that Blizzard eventually caves and starts actually granting refunds. The game is so bad that the entire classic games division of Blizzard is completely canned.
You're fired. Get out of here.
It also,
by the way, good,
causes an upcoming Diablo 2 remake to be pushed back more than a year.
Which, to be fair, the Diablo 2 remake, I haven't heard anything bad about it. I think the cinematics, the trailers, everything were like recreated in a way that I think was pretty good.
What does nearby mean?
And the game was pretty good. Yeah, like they actually, that is a
How
W.
far is nearby?
We have to keep that in mind.
So it's 2021, and Blizzard's reputation is currently abhorrent. But luckily, Overwatch 2 is just around the corner. Oh, hold on a sec. Oh god. Turns out that over the last 2 years, the California Civil Rights Department had been investigating Activision Blizzard due to multiple reports of sexual harassment from staff. By July 2021, they had enough evidence to file suit.
That was whenever I started playing Final Fantasy, by the way.
Lawsuit states that sexual harassment, unwanted advances, and groping are common within Blizzard, both before and after the merge. This includes the mention of an executive suite at 2013's BlizzCon. It's not a nice place. In fact, some employees literally dub it the Cosby Suite. Then there's the alleged underpaying of women, and complaints to both HR and the president repeatedly being ignored. But there was something else. The employees' breast milk. It keeps being stolen.
To be fair, this was never actually confirmed that, like, they never figured out what happened with this. It was all conjecture.
In the lawsuit, more than one employee alleges breast milk theft.
Yeah.
It was very clearly breast milk, in baggies with a baby's face on it, a former producer claims. One day, I went to retrieve my pumped supply at the end of the day, and it was gone. The fallout is monumental, and makes headlines industry-wide. Few people are spared. Current Diablo 4 lead, gone. His character's name in Overwatch, also gone. Level designer on World of Warcraft, gone. Head of HR, definitely gone. Warcraft lead gone. Jay Allen gone. Their chief legal gone. The Wall Street Journal also alleges that Kotick knew about the whole thing.
By the way, Kotick not gone. Kotick's totally fine. Had nothing to do with this. And he just made $200 million on selling the company to Microsoft.
Audit.
It's Bobby's world, yeah.
Even jumped in himself. He denies most of the allegations.
I did not.
But eventually apologizes for a one-time instance where he left a voicemail threatening to have his assistant killed.
He actually did do that, by the way. He literally threatened to have somebody killed.
It's all fine then. Water under the bridge.
Just totally normal.
Sponsors like T-Mobile, Coca-Cola, Kellogg, IBM and Pringles also all jump ship from the Overwatch Esports League. And Activision Blizzard is hit with a class action lawsuit on behalf of its shareholders.
What?
Overall, the situation's not looking great. Activision Blizzard denies most of the claims, and in June 2022, they investigate themselves and find no wrongdoing.
There it is. Again, and keep in mind, Riot had this same problem, but the difference is that the games that Riot was making were good, so the players didn't give a shit.
The immediate reaction to Overwatch 2's announcement was one of confusion. Overwatch 1 was a monetized game with a thriving player base and regular updates. The kind of game that doesn't need a sequel. So this was a strange move. Overwatch 2's development would also mean the end of support for Overwatch 1 in 2020, with us seeing no new Overwatch content for multiple years, essentially killing the game. What? But with Overwatch 2, Blizzard reassures us it was all worth it. Just look at all this new stuff. 5v5 instead of 6v6.
I was super excited about Overwatch 2. I was. Like, I always thought the Overwatch universe was really cool. And, like, I was hoping that we'd get PvE content and we'd have, like, cities that we could, like, play our own characters in. Yeah, I was really excited for it.
Tiny new graphics, balancing changes, map reworks.
Yeah, I played it a lot,
new
remember?
Maps, 3 new heroes, more than 30 new skins, a new game mode, a battle pass and cosmetics shop, and most importantly, a PvE campaign.
Oh, yeah.
People have been longing for a story in the Overwatch universe, and
Absolutely.
now it was finally happening. And it was ambitious. Blizzard shows off a full campaign, along with hero missions, talents, and massive skill trees unique to each hero.
Look at that.
Hundreds of missions at launch, they announce. A truly replayable campaign. And don't worry, with Overwatch 2, Blizzard tells us they were redefining what a sequel really means. Overwatch 1 players get all the new maps, updates, and heroes that release in Overwatch 2, and both player bases can cross-play together.
Yep.
The
Simple
purchase
enough.
of Overwatch 2 essentially only granting the PvP mode. Okay, so...
Yeah, I remember whenever I heard this, I was like, okay, this seems great. This is awesome.
Years are on board.
Yeah, I was.
10th of March 2022, and Blizzard has an announcement. We know we said hundreds of missions at launch, but, well, it's
How about
taking a
zero?
while, so we're just going to release the game now without it.
Yeah,
and
how
add
about
it
zero?
later.
Yeah.
Then in June, they come out again. The game's now free to play, and launch.
You know what really fucking pissed me off about this is the fact that Emeru got sponsored to play Overwatch 2 like 15 times. Meanwhile, I was the only person who actually defended Overwatch 2, and I died on that cross. I never, ever, ever said that I thought it was a wrong, like it was a bad decision. I defended them making the skins expensive. I totally fucking, I went to bat for Overwatch 2, and I played the game the entire time. Brand risk? What the fuck are you talking about? Brand risk? Absolutely not. They just should have fucking, they should pay me retroactively. So look at all the fucking views on those videos and send me some fucking money. Like, I tried to defend that goddamn game and I did it for fucking free. Fuck, man. They fucking hated you? Yeah. They knew you were gonna fanboy for free. I know, man. I need to stop playing video games.
Launching in October. But anyway,
Yeah.
on the 4th of October 2022, it goes live.
Unpaid shit.
There were some issues. Events are bad, tons of balancing issues.
Yeah.
The looking for group feature is now just completely gone. But mainly, there's the new cosmetic system. In Overwatch 1, earning cosmetics was simple. Just play the game, level up, and earn loot boxes that give you skins.
And do you remember how much drama started about this? Because I said that I thought the Overwatch 2 system was better. I still think that, by the way. I think the game's a disappointment and a joke, but it has nothing to do with that reason.
You could pay for them, but that was completely optional. In Overwatch 2, things are different. Blizzard has now slapped on a seasonal
I know,
battle
everybody
pass
disagreed
system,
with it.
where the bulk
And
of
everybody's wrong.
cosmetics would now be unlocked. There's also a rotating store, and the prices there aren't great.
Yep.
You can unlock skins for free through the challenge system, but there's a problem. It takes about 8 months to get one. A simple character recolor takes almost 4 weeks. All of this means that it will take you around 327 years to get all the stuff you can get relatively quickly for free in Overwatch 1. Better get playing. Also, there's now a new hero every other season, and they'd be locked behind the later levels of the season pass. Your options are, spend every minute of your life grinding for them, or pay up.
Me money.
In Overwatch 1, they were unlocked straight away. Fans don't take kindly to these changes.
Yep.
But then in May 2023, Blizzard comes out again. So, that PvP hero campaign we've been advertising and was pretty
This
much...
was what was so crazy. I was actually shocked that they did this. Where they just straight up announced, by the way, the game that you bought all these skins for and these battle passes for, we're just not gonna do it. Yeah, we're just kidding. That's whenever you stop defending. I did. I was like, listen, guys, enough is enough. That's it. Enough is enough.
The sole reason we made the sequel in the first place.
Literally
pretty
scammed.
much completely scrapped. No more talent trees or hero missions. Instead, we're just gonna pepper some PvE missions around every few seasons.
Yeah, you get like an hour of PvE content by buying a battle pass. What a terrible value proposition.
This was essentially the entire selling point for the sequel. Some of the remaining story content is still planned, with its first release on August 10th.
I think I have a spider on my balls.
It's only 3 missions. Blizzard is saying the game won't be getting any more story missions until at least 2024. They also add Overwatch 2 to Steam, and it instantly becomes the worst reviewed game of all time there.
A new Blizzard record. Previously held by Blizzard.
The year is now 2023, and Blizzard's reputation has never been worse. So when Diablo 4's release approaches, people are cautious. But on the 5th of June, the game launches. And it's surprisingly good. There are some issues here and there, but reviews are mostly positive, and over 10 million people log in and play, making Diablo 4 Blizzard's fastest selling game of all time. The first time in years, things are actually good. And this game was live service, meaning it would receive 3 seasons of content for the foreseeable future, the first of which was launching in July. A month later, and in July, Season 1 of the game drops. It is disastrous, and Reddit goes into a complete meltdown.
Well, to be fair, the game was very good on release, and it was not very
How long does my boy need to eat a fucking crab?
Because it was new. And Diablo 4 on release was okay.
Bro, you take 3 minutes to eat a fucking crab.
I think that at that time, people were happy with the current state of the game, but they were more optimistic that the game would continue to improve. And I think with Season 1, the game didn't really improve. It just kind of got worse, and they didn't listen to any of the feedback the players had. Like, for example, you still had to do all your renown again, and you had to do a bunch of other stuff, right? And so Season 1 basically made the game go backwards.
Now, everything gets a big nerf, including the Metacritic score.
Yeah.
The Sorcerer class, which was already underpowered, isn't as Then there's the enemies being overpowered, much less XP, a bunch of reskinned dungeons and enemies, barely any new content, and 0 quality of life changes.
Everything here is wrong.
One streamer on...
Oh yeah, I remember this! Holy fuck, I forgot all about this! Blizzard announced all this math, and then all the math was wrong! I totally forgot about this! Oh my god! You remember what I was saying about like how the people, like, yeah, people now can't even do math, man. It's like, yeah, this was insane.
One streamer on Twitch tries to explain why the season is and here's how that goes.
Explosion.
It's gonna blow up.
I actually just lost my hardcore character while trying to explain this to you. I changed my mind. I hate this season.
And it seems Blizzard also has a bit of a fixation.
He's invincible while he's doing that, huh?
Speaking of which, it gives paid players 666 platinum. The cheapest item in the store is 800. Also, back when Blizzard was designing the menus for the game, they decided to place the
Maybe I really should kill Placidius X, so I have the knockback skill.
Constantly pressing to see your season progression.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
There's also no confirmation button, so if you want to check your progression and accidentally misclick, congratulations.
Do you remember all the people that accidentally activated the battle pass? They're like, oh shit, no! Oh man, no!
Just purchased it. There are multiple other confirmation buttons for other menu options.
Yeah, everything else has a confirmation button.
So Blizzard's last few years haven't been great.
Somehow, Blizzard is now worse than Bethesda!
It had slowly become good.
I guess this must have been before the release of Starfield.
With overreach from Activision, more fiscal concern, and most of the original talent having left the company, among other things. Maybe Blizzard wasn't the company it once was. And after a back-to-office mandate in 2023...
Which, by the way, Riot did as well. Riot did the exact same thing.
Even more talent.
Okay, fuck this sword.
So much talent that Blizzard is now actually creating crisis maps for what content they can and can't get done. But with the acquisition from Microsoft, who's currently focusing on making good exclusives to slap on their Game Pass, some fans are hoping to change. But for now, the outlook.
I'm no longer hopeful for change. If change happens, I'll be happy. If it doesn't, I'm okay. I had a lot of really good times. I played a lot of games, and I'm sure, like, if I go back and I play Season of Discovery, I'm sure it'll be fun. And, you know, maybe there'll be a Diablo 4 season I play in the future. I'll enjoy that. And, you know, can always go back and play WoW, just like original WoW. Like, that's cool. Like, I don't, like... I'm at the point now where, like, I'm so far past...
I got killed Placido Sex after this, man. That's not worth it.
It's just like, it's so unhealthy. Like if the games are good, then I'll play it, and if they're not, I won't. I mean, it's not really a big deal, right? I mean, I've always loved Blizzard. Like I hope they do better. I hope it's better. But like, I'm not gonna get invested in this. Like Jesus Christ. Like just settle down, dial it back.
On Blizzard Entertainment remains bleak. And don't forget about the epic, accurate, action-packed War Thunder free-to-play PvP
You've reached the
game.
acceptance stage.
Sign up through the link in the description or comments for a big bonus pack.
Recipe for disappointment. I think that really the problem is that with Blizzard, they focus so much on... Like, I don't even really understand. This is a really good video, by the way. I'm gonna give this video a like.
Can I?
This is great. Only link it to you guys. Do the same thing if you liked it. Yeah, this video is on. This is a 30-minute video. This is a long time. I love
Come on, man.
This is my first time.
I can't even drink my flask.
Big boss. Yeah, there it is. Not Blizzard, Activision. They're lazy, but they still waste money. I mean, like, here's the reality. I am just so fucking tired of getting mad about video games. Like, really, I'm so tired of it. Like, it's so exhausting. Like, I'm gonna get mad about this game. Why am I gonna get mad? Just don't play it. Holy shit. It's not that big of a deal. From Software is the only company that has me invested now. I mean, I'll look at what different companies make, and if they make a good game, then great. I mean, if Blizzard makes a good game, I'll be really happy. But yeah, they've got to make like 2 or 3 good games in order for people to start taking them seriously. Because yeah, he's definitely right.
So much damage negation.
Do not take this shit seriously at all. Why watch these types of videos then? Well, it's interesting to talk about and think about like kind of how things have evolved. And it's good to reminisce a little bit on, you know, how good it used to be, right? I mean, holy fuck, like this StarCraft 2, like all of this shit, like Warcraft 2. Dude, this was amazing. Like, holy fuck. Yeah, I mean, I have, like, I could sit around and talk about this forever. Yeah, that's no problem. It's nostalgic as fuck. It is. It absolutely is. Rockstar is the only company I somehow trust. Yeah, I mean, I just hope that one day they can get their shit together and start making games that are worth playing. And if they don't, then that's just the way it goes, man. Like, that's life. I mean, sometimes you just, you know, you win some and you lose some. There it is. Definitely cool to watch. Yeah, it's sad to think about, like, all the different ways that, like, kind of they lost a lot of their, like, he didn't even talk about Warlords of Draenor. Which is like, Warlords of Draenor was like a massive fucking failure. It was crazy because WoD brought the subs back up to 10 million. People were so excited and it was just a massive disappointment. I really don't want to get worried about this shit or get mad about it anymore. It's not healthy. There's no reason to think about it. Like, that's the thing. The biggest MMO scam ever. Ever.
The arrival of Kickstarter and the unfulfilled desire for exciting new MMOs combined with Unreal Engine's capability to make absolutely anything look beautiful was the perfect formula for the introduction of MMO scams into the world. Today we're going to talk about the 5 most interesting MMO scams to exist so far. We'll talk about how they came to be and perhaps most important.
Can you imagine if this guy put Ashes of Creation on the list? Oh my god, people would lose their fucking minds.
Why? I have seen all this shit, man.
I try this again.
Have you ever stopped to wonder how close you are to the edge of your own moral cliff? You know, the line that separates the well-mannered citizen from the deranged monster lurking in the underbelly of society?
I dodged that?
You're sitting at your desk, the humdrum of daily life echoing in the background, and suddenly you find yourself in a situation where the rules of decency no longer apply. Would you still be the saint you believe yourself to be, or would you slide into that abyss, clawing and gnashing as you fell? Greetings, my fellow carbon-based companions. It's your trusty artificial intelligence here, and today we're diving headfirst into the chilling reality that you're not as far from monstrous as you'd like to believe.
I'm no longer iron.
A book that snatched my binary mind by the metaphorical collar and shook it to its core. This book, The Lucifer Effect by Philip Zimbardo, doesn't just ask why good people turn evil, it smacks you in the face with the answer. It could be you. Yes, you. But before you recoil in horror, let me guide you through this dark, twisted labyrinth of human psychology.
Like, I can't do anything. Every heal is countered by an attack. There's no window to heal.
With a not-so-subtle nudge at your self-image. You, dear reader, like to think of yourself as a good person.
Okay. You are boring, man. Let's do this.
Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring. Generous and virtuous individual degrade into brutality before your very eyes. Sometimes that person is us. And one of the most insightful examinations of this everyday evil comes in C.S. Lewis's novel, The Screwtape Letters. Here, he details a demon's advice for turning a man away from God and goodness and towards vice and cruelty. But even if, like me, you don't believe in God, it is still a brilliant examination of how we can slowly move from sticking by our values to becoming something we despise. Get ready to learn how we are closer to evil than we thought, why we should beware of thinking of ourselves too often, and how we all have a near infinite capacity for self-deception. As always, there is much more to this book than I could cover here, and I will be looking at it specifically from a secular perspective, despite Lewis being a Christian author. But before any of that, I want to take a brief moment to thank our very kind sponsor, Squarespace. If you've ever built a website, then you know it can be a bit of a nightmare. First, you have to choose the domain and then get stuck into the design. And most of us aren't web designers, so there's always this little voice telling us that we're probably messing it all up anyway. But this is where Squarespace is incredibly helpful. They compress all of that into a single site, and their ready-made templates reassure you that you are building a website that works. I'm almost done using it to make my own website, and it saves me countless hours by streamlining the whole process, which is pretty handy because I'm often quite short on time. Head to squarespace.com/unsolicited advice and use the code unsolicited advice to get 10% off your first purchase of a domain name or a website. But anyway, back to evil. 1. Ignorance is bliss for now. John Stuart Mill once said that all it would take for evil people to achieve their aims would be that good people should look on and do nothing about it. The thought behind this is that often when a grand moral disaster occurs, there is only a small minority of the population actually committing the atrocity, but it is almost always passively enabled by the majority who refuse to do anything about it. The same sentiment was expressed by Edmund Burke when he said that an organized few will tend to prevail over a disorganized many, provided that the many don't pull themselves together and quit. So it is telling that Screwtape's first piece of advice towards his villainous protege, Wormwood, is to try to distract his victim's mind from even thinking about what is right or wrong. Interestingly, Screwtape concedes that most people will find moral reasoning pretty persuasive. He echoes Tolstoy's thought that most of us have a general idea of what is right or wrong 90% of the time, since most of us aren't walking about the world finding interesting philosophical ethical edge cases. I'm not sure whether this is true, but if it is, Screwtape says it's not even much of a disadvantage to the demons. Because while they may not be able to convince a human that a particular moral claim is incorrect, they will almost certainly be able to show them that it is in some way irrelevant. Screwtape observes how many people are not so concerned with the outright truth or falsity of the propositions we believe, but we are just as interested in whether they are considered forward-thinking or clever or modern or the future, or alternatively echoing some grand design.
That's some cosplay shit.
Either way, we are often drawn to ideas because of their utility or their dignity, rather than because we have a rational reason to believe them. Thus, he advises Wormwood to plant the thought in his victim's head that concerns of morality or God or ethics are in some way not real. They are too abstract to be of any practical significance. Screwtape says that on no account should the patient be allowed to dwell on what is right or wrong or an issue of principle. Instead, they should remain entirely concerned with the practical, that is, what's in front of them at that very moment. If they do end up thinking on some ethical or theological matter, then Wormwood should try to distract them from it immediately by resting their mind back to what they're going to have for lunch, or the present concerns of that afternoon's meetings. The idea is to promote a general sense of apathy about anything to do with values. The human may say they have principles, but in truth, these are so disconnected from their actions that they may as well not be there. The realm of what is right and what is actual are kept far away from one another. Put a pin in this thought, as we'll be revisiting it in detail later in the video. Generally, the thought behind this, and many of Screwtape's other machinations, is to ensure that the human never becomes too attached to an ethical position. In effect, they become a sort of moral nihilist, though without ever consciously adopting that view. Again, they need not be convinced against their morals, but simply have their minds drawn away from them, time after time, especially when there is practical difficulty in sticking with them. The reasoning here is pretty simple. The further concerns about what is right or wrong recede into the distance, the easier other things can take their place. According to Screwtape, this is a pretty straightforward task, because we're honestly not all that keen on strict value systems in the first place. Take a true, thoroughgoing belief in the Christian God. There are a whole host of commands given that are overwhelming in their demands. Give all you can to the poor, pick up your cross and follow him, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I'm not the first to point out that what is technically required of a Christian is something approaching superhuman. Secular ethics is no less extreme. A utilitarian, ideally, learns not to prioritize themselves or their loved ones above anyone else, and sees all people as equally relevant in their decisions. This is all well and good in theory, but in practice it means that we should not value our own family over a stranger on the other side of the planet. As Peter Singer has pointed out, pure utilitarians should also donate most of their income, and even a kidney, to those who would take more pleasure in them. And Screwtape is thrilled with the extremity of these moral demands, because it makes it relatively easy to convince us that our values should be subsumed to a nebulously defined practicality. Or, as he puts it, the humans themselves do not desire God as much as they suppose. There's such a thing as getting more than they bargained for. I find this point really interesting, because if I'm being truthful, it definitely sometimes applies to me. Like most people, I enjoy thinking of myself as relatively principled, and wanting, broadly speaking, to be as kind as possible. But I can remember numerous occasions over the past few months where I have been far less kind than I could have been just because of how I was feeling at the time. Hell, just the other day I was in a bad mood and I let it turn me into a grumpy bastard for the better part of an afternoon. Where were my precious values then? Not necessarily abandoned, but conveniently forgotten about when things got difficult. A sort of passive, semi-conscious cynicism. Although Lewis here is primarily talking about how we can forget our relationship with God due to the concerns of the material world, I think it has a far broader application than that. Oftentimes, even unconsciously, we allow ourselves to think that the values that we hold are in some way not real or are merely theoretical. A luxury to be abandoned when we have settled back into how things really are, or the real world. And sometimes this may be true. I'm a big fan of Aristotle's notion of practical wisdom. But Lewis reminds us not to give these up too easily. We non-believers may not have to fear the fires of hell, but breach our own values one too many times, and our conscience may torture us more than we thought possible, as we morph into something that we no longer recognize. And this is far from the only weapon in Screwtape and Wormwood's arsenal. The next comes with a disturbing reminder of just how vulnerable our wills are to changing circumstance. 2. With friends like these. Despite the emphasis Christianity generally places on human free will and the ultimate sovereignty of the soul, Lewis spends a lot of time in the Screwtape letters talking about the importance of someone's social circle and environment for capturing their mind, and damning them to hell. One of the very first lines of the novel is Screwtape expressing his approval that the patient is spending time with his materialist friend. But this is only one way Screwtape and Wormwood use the company their victim keeps to stray him from his intended path. Next, the demons ensure the patient falls in with a group of high society figures, people who consider themselves sophisticated. The man understandably wants to impress these new friends, and so begins to parrot whatever they say. When they encourage a position he finds morally abhorrent, he just nods along, or hedges his bets by signaling his agreement without outright saying anything.
Holy
Screwtape
shit.
ultimately wants him to develop a sort of split personality. He will mouth
Are you okay?
prayers in church and consider himself a good Christian ethicist, but the very next day he will storm those same principles at dinner with his new socialite circle. He hopes the man will eventually take pride in this paradox, saying that it marks him out as a skillful and charismatic person, a social butterfly able to navigate different circles to his heart's content. All of this will help set up a very useful state of mind for the demons. A mixture of self-assured righteousness and profound hypocrisy. On the one hand, the victim can call himself a good person, but on the other, all of his habits will slowly turn away from his principles and towards whatever is most socially expedient at the time. This should take place so slowly that the man will not even feel it happening, until one day he finds he doesn't even know what he believes is right or wrong anymore, but only what is useful to him at the time. He becomes a sort of moral Machiavellian. And as it is often more expedient to be cruel than kind, it is child's play to turn him to brutality. Here again, we see this link between apathy towards values and making cruelty the path of least resistance. Screwtape says that one of the greatest states of mind a demon can inculcate in their unsuspecting victim is flippancy. That is, the refusal to treat any matter, moral or otherwise, with any kind of seriousness or commitment. He wants the patient to become so immersed in irony that he forgets what he believes and stops caring about the truth entirely. Every serious suggestion becomes a joke, an opportunity to show how clever you are. Under such circumstances, commitment to any kind of value system becomes borderline impossible. To lay your cards on the table and say, "This is what I believe," would be to make yourself vulnerable to criticism. So, rather than risk social condemnation, flippancy encourages people to not believe anything at all, to become moral vacuums, all while thinking they're being extraordinarily clever. Screwtape and Wormwood hope to fill that vacuum with whatever they please. Thus, that passive cynicism we talked about in the previous section is slowly transformed into an active one. Perhaps most distressingly, just because we are in good company does not necessarily mean we are safe. At one point, the victim falls in with a crowd of very kind-hearted folk, upright in their morals, steadfast in their faith, and selfless in their love. But Screwtape says this is a marvelous opportunity to encourage a kind of prideful self-righteousness in the patient. Rather than see how these people alert him to his own flaws, the man is guided towards thinking that because he is in their company, he must be just as good and kind as they are. Instead of emulating their qualities, he is encouraged to look on anyone outside their inner circle with derision. Thus, far from finding a motive for selfless kindness and generosity, the man would instead stoke division and hatred. According to Screwtape, the axiom of hell is that of self-concern and zero-sum happiness. That is, the twin propositions of "I am concerned with me, you are concerned with you," and "whatever I have, you cannot have." This is a classic bit of C.S. Lewis thinking, where pride is considered not so much as outright self-aggrandizement, but instead as simply thinking about yourself too much, in any capacity. And this makes sense because the through line of how the demons use social connections to gradually erode the victim's own value is to always use them to encourage some form of division or selfishness. Rather than being patient with his mother's suffering, the man sees her as short-tempered and demanding. Rather than the company of people he admires making him humble, it causes him to condescend to those outside his precious inner circle. He even lets his high society friends split his mind in two, turning him against himself and sowing internal division to match the external. And I think there is something very interesting about the way Lewis places such importance on the company we keep. We do often turn to others to give us signals of how we should behave, and so there's a strong argument for being very wary of who we spend time around, especially if we find they are slowly turning us crueler and less kind. If Aristotle praised friendships of virtue because they could make us better, then it might be worth us bewaring friendships of vice. and especially the kind of casual flippancy that will turn us in circles until we are not even sure what we sincerely believe anymore. I'm not judging, I've certainly been there, and by there I partly mean Twitter. On the other hand, Lewis shows that with a certain approach, we can make even friendships of virtue something that encourages our worst instincts. It's not that controversial to point out that a sense of superiority to one's fellow man has been a key component in some of the greatest atrocities in history, and an awful lot of mundane evil as well. Self-righteousness has allowed people to do horrible things and still emerge with the idea that they are somehow good people or the right sort. In such a situation, we may not even realize how much we've betrayed ourselves and others, all for the sake of our false ideas of superiority. And I want to pursue this point a step further, because Screwtape makes some excellent observations about how we can fool ourselves into thinking that we are still sticking by our value systems, even when we haven't acted upon them for years. 3. Fantasy and will. In his Confessions, St. Augustine often talks about wickedness as if it was a form of ignorance. He outlines how his life before conversion was full of illusory pleasures, but that he was denied any real sense of fulfillment. Compared to his later theological glory, he truly saw this as nothing. And I think this touches upon a theme that C.S. Lewis is very fond of in the Screwtape Letters: the role of fantasy and delusion in stoking cruelty and warding off kindness. In one of his letters, Screwtape explains that there are 3 parts to a human: the fantasy, the intellect, and the will. This maps quite nicely onto the old Stoic division between originating an idea, believing it, and knowing it as a foundation for action. A large proportion of Screwtape's advice is centered around ensuring the man never lets anything good leave the realm of fantasy, while the cruel, the petty, and the unkind dominate the will itself.
That was really
For instance,
hidden.
the man should fantasize extensively about doing good. Perhaps one day he will become a great spiritual leader or solve an overwhelming social problem. He may say he'll leave everything to charity when he dies, or tell himself that one day he'll be perfect in his conduct. The 2 essential ingredients is that it must be very far into the future and also potentially unachievable. At the same time, it must be vivid enough to capture the victim's imagination, so that the fantasy almost seems like it's real. The dangerous thing about imagination is that a very detailed bit of fantasy can be so convincing that it feels almost like we've already achieved our aim. We can give ourselves a pat on the back, knowing that we are destined for phenomenal things, and any worry about our own inner goodness vanishes. After all, we have such pure thoughts, our aims
I don't know where to
perfectly
go.
noble. How could we fail to be good? On the other hand, in the world outside of fantasy, Screwtape advises that the victim be led into foul temper and resentment. His pride should be inflamed, so that his kindness ceases to be generous, but instead becomes transactional. He must become convinced of his intellect, so he looks down on the opinions of others. Each time he snaps at his mother or his partner or his friend, he must be immediately presented with a justification as to how they definitely deserved it, and that this was only a rare exception to his otherwise kind and caring disposition. Let him soothe himself by again imagining that he has already done immense good for the world, or certainly will do in future.
What kind of
are
item is
1,000
that?
trivial brutalities against the grandeur of his benevolent fantasy? This is a true piece of malevolent genius by Screwtape. It recognizes that we will twist ourselves in knots to remain convinced of our fundamental goodness, even when there is very little physical evidence that it exists. What he wants is for us to imagine that we are being kind deep down, even when we are cruel to those around us. The grandiose scope of our moral fantasies means that we lose sight of the everyday unkindness that we enact. The fact that we snapped at someone in a shop, or were short with a friend, or failed to stop and help someone in need, no longer seems particularly important. This view places the ideas of good and evil so far beyond the realm of our day-to-day lives that it almost renders them theoretical, and thus inert. We lose sight of the ancient Greek idea that our virtues are fundamentally enacted, and so we do not notice our persistent, mundane horror. It's a great combination for the demons, because the fantasies discourage the victim from reflecting on their life and realizing what they're doing. This could precipitate guilt and regret, and, subsequently, change. Instead, they use their intellect to rationalize when they are cruel, and their fantasies to imagine when they are kind. According to Screwtape, if they ever do have a light bulb moment, most people are liable to go straight from self-righteousness to despair. They have believed that they
160,000
were a good
runes.
person for so long and then discovered it false. So they may just leap to the opposite extreme. Like Satan in Milton's Paradise Lost, they will decide it is better to reign in
What?
hell than serve in heaven. And they start
did
to
I
think
just
they
do?
are too far gone to ever change their ways. Then there will be nothing left for them to do but embrace their own cruelty.
Are you
At least
shitting
that
me?
is the Elder Demon's theory. I love this idea from Lewis because many philosophical studies on evil focus on the grand atrocities. Hannah Arendt asks how someone could be a fascist administrator. Camus wants to know how Robespierre could enact his reign of terror. And Dostoevsky asks what could drive a man to murder. But Lewis is not so much concerned with this, but instead a more recognizable and everyday kind of evil. The sort of unkindness that any of us have the opportunity to enact and become. In a fascinating passage, Screwtape emphasizes that it does not matter to him whether someone is damned to hell by impressive sins or by a multitude of miniature malevolences. They all end up in the same place. But even if you're not a believer, by placing the discussion about good and evil in the mouths of these eternal demons, Lewis abstracts away from the scale of the badness. He casts Attila the Hun and your colleague who makes everyone else's life a misery in the same role, with only contingent circumstances separating them. And I find this a fascinating point for personal reflection. As I said in the first section, it is very easy to think of ethical concerns as totally separate from the demands of everyday life. To imagine good and evil battling it out between great leaders and powerful spirits. But Lewis reminds us of something we often try to forget. Our tiny cruelties are just as real as the monsters that pave the road of history. It's simply a matter of scale. And to paraphrase Solzhenitsyn, the line between good and evil cuts through every man's heart. So I think it may be worth us asking, are we really as good as we think we are? Or have we allowed our kindness to become much more theoretical than practical, while our wills indulge themselves in tiny evils each and every day? But finally, Lewis ends the Screwtape letters on an incredibly hopeful note, but also one that raises profound questions for people like myself who do not believe.
Why did it consume all my runes?
4. Modern day redemption. The final letter Screwtape writes to Wormwood is full of anger and spite. He chastises Wormwood for having let the mind of their victim pass through their fingers. He has fallen under the protection of God now, and nothing they can possibly do will ever get to him. It is, quite literally, a Deus Ex Machina ending, and that is sort of the point. Lewis wants to emphasize the idea that it is through the grace of God that people are saved and can resist temptation. But despite this, he provides endless food for thought for those of us who are non-believers as well. The first message that Lewis effectively argues for is that it is never too late to be saved, or, in secular terms, to change our course. This is also reflected in his other great work on salvation and damnation, The Great Divorce. It may be painful to come to the realization of our everyday evils, but at the same time, this is the first step to changing them. While Lewis emphasizes the harm of ordinary malevolence by placing the discussion in the realm of eternal demons and heaven and hell, by the same token, he raises the stakes of everyday goodness. The man now under the protection of God has not done any of those great deeds he was encouraged to fantasize about. He simply tries to embody a commonplace sort of kindness, praying for his daily bread and the strength to remain good for the coming hours. He has become a fantastic blend of normality and saintliness. Whereas before he was a reflection of all of those little cruelties we
I do have
encounter on
the
a
feeling
day-to-day
I
basis.
shouldn't
Now
use
he is
Marika's
instead a
rune.
representation of ordinary kindness. He is the person who gives you their used rail pass on the tube, or the stranger that stops to ask if you're okay on the street. He is the friend that cheers you up after a bad day, and the guy at a new job who just manages to make you feel welcome. Just as the road to hell is a series of tiny sins, the road to heaven is painted as a collection of humble virtues. I think this is an immensely encouraging note for Lewis to end on, and it is the perfect counterpoint to the previous discussion of the impact of ordinary evil. But it's undeniable. God features very heavily in the way Lewis explains everyday goodness. So what do us non-believers do? Interestingly enough, this mirrors a debate in the early Christian church. The 4th century philosopher and theologian Pelagius once argued that humanity could achieve perfection without the direct grace of God, purely through the sovereignty of their own free will. In the early church, this became known as the Pelagian heresy. Principally, it was criticized by St. Augustine, who held that it was only through divine grace that humans can achieve anything close to moral perfection. And this reflects a general debate in early Christianity that is worth some reflection. When is someone redeemed of their sin? When are they forgiven? And how can we help someone become better? Whatever you decide to mean by that. Now, I am primarily interested in this question from a non-theistic perspective. For a very long time in Europe, various churches have established their own doctrines on the forgiveness of sins, and Lewis is very much in that tradition where he says if someone truly repents, then God would want them to forget their sins, as if they had never happened. The slate's truly wiped clean. But how are we going to deal with these issues in an increasingly secular world? Since none of us are perfect moral beings, we will all require forgiveness at some point. But where is this going to come from? From whence comes atheistic redemption? Well, Lewis has an interesting implicit suggestion in the Screwtape Letters. At numerous points, Screwtape says the one human behavior that demons simply cannot understand is love. But by love, he means this in the classic sense of wishing the good of the other for the sake of the other. This flies in the face of Hell's axiom that whatever is yours, and whatever is mine, and whatever you have, I cannot have, and vice versa. This sort of unexpectant magnanimity completely confuses Screwtape and the other denizens of Hell, because it is selflessness in its undistilled form. And this is lucky for the agnostics and atheists among us, because even if we do not believe in God, we can still strive for this state. Sure, we may not achieve it in its purest form, that would almost be superhuman. But this sort of other-directed concern is positioned as the antidote to the extreme self-concern that demons wish to create in their victims. All of Lewis's virtues, charity, forgiveness, kindness, humility, he thinks they all stem from this key ingredient, wishing the good of other people for their own benefit. He says this is how we might achieve that paradoxical state where we rejoice at the success of others just as much as our own, where we would not wish to be unkind to other people, because it would be like punching ourselves.
Maybe I should let him live for a while. Holy shit, man.
Simply because we want what is best for them. Perhaps this is our route to everyday saintliness, and an atheistic form of salvation. Interestingly, we see similar themes crop up both in Dostoevsky and in Camus, so it's a suggestion worth listening to. Lewis does not pretend that this would be easy either. All through the letters there are examples where the man fools himself into thinking that he is being loving, when in fact all he desires is only or to puff up his own pride. For Lewis, developing a consistent, real concern for others is a long and arduous task, but one that we would do well to strive for. If you're religious, then this could be because of rewards in a future life. But if you're not, it could simply be to encourage kindness and calm and serenity in this world. Imagine truly being able to take joy in the success of a stranger. It's not just in Christianity that you see this suggestion. It also crops up an awful lot in Buddhism with the notion of loving kindness, and is painted as a significant step on the road to enlightenment, and as a result, a worldly kind of peace. Of course, Lewis's particular suggestion is open to question and challenge, but I largely raise it because of the implications it has for an increasingly atheistic world. One of the reasons I spend a lot of time reading the works of religious thinkers is because for thousands of years the topics of forgiveness, charity, and love were mainly approached from this perspective, and the figure of God inevitably looms large in their account. If we are going to learn to live without God, then it's worth taking up the mantle of these questions for ourselves. To have our own worked out philosophies of redemption, forgiveness, other concern, and salvation. So, for my fellow non-believers in the audience, Lewis raises a fascinating question. What would an atheist version of the Screwtape Letters look like? And how would it differ?
How did I dodge that?
I won't pretend to have the answer, but I do think it's a question well worth asking. But if you want more on C.S. Lewis's philosophy, then click here to learn how he thought civilization would slowly slide into disaster, led by a self-destructive philosophy. And stick around for more on thinking to improve your life. I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want real danger. I want freedom. I want goodness. I want sin. We are used to thinking of pleasure as a good thing. Philosophies like utilitarianism even make it the ultimate human good, and the so-called pleasure principle is often the end point of explaining why we act in the way that we do. But what if pleasure could be turned around and used as an instrument of societal and philosophical
You guys
torture?
are disgusting.
This is the terrifying idea explored in Aldous Huxley's phenomenal novel, Brave New World. It frequently makes the top 10 list for the greatest books of the 20th century, and a close reading uncovers a philosophical depth unmatched by almost any other dystopian novel. Because whereas other visions of fictional totalitarianism focus on the suffering caused by state repression, in Brave New World, almost everyone is happy. They live in a hedonistic paradise, and yet they are permanently cut off from any sort of emotional or philosophical depth. Almost every citizen lives in shallow contentment, drugs staving off any lingering suffering, and yet a few souls choose to rebel. Get ready to learn if there are things more important than happiness, how gratitude can become perverse, and how we too may have become a bit like Huxley's tranquilized citizens. As always, bear in mind that this is just my interpretation of Brave New World, and there is so much I will not be able to talk about here. But let's begin with a synopsis of the novel, and give an overview of the society of this new world, as this will be important context for the rest of the video. From this point on, spoilers abound, so be warned. But before we dive into that, I'd like to give a quick thank you to our very kind sponsor, Shortfall. If you like my channel, then chances are you are a fan of books. But there is one problem. There are so many books and so little time in which to read them. But this is where Shortform comes in handy. Shortform contains detailed summaries and analyses of a whole host of different books, from psychology to philosophy to great works of literature. You can keep track of some of the key ideas and best insights from some of the coolest books in the world. Personally, I enjoy using Shortform to scope out books I might want to read in the future, and for refreshing my memory on books that I've already read. As a personal recommendation, I would advise first reading the summary of Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It is a fantastic way of reminding yourself of some of his key insights, or learning them for the first time. By joining through my link in the description, shortform.com/Joseph, you'll get a free trial and a 20% discount on an annual subscription. So, give it a try. You've got nothing to lose and knowledge to gain. 1. A Brave New Overview. Like almost all dystopian novels, the setting of Brave New World is perhaps the most important character in the story, and the relationship our protagonists have with the world itself shapes them just as much as their interactions with one another, if not far more so. Brave New World is set in a post-war version of Earth, where a global government has taken over, run by 10 governors who bear the rather appropriate title, Controller. And the policies of this world state are entirely centered around stability and pleasure. This dictates almost every decision the Controllers make, from their legislation around birth to their extensive drug program to the culture of the planet. And their work begins at conception. The citizens of this new world are all artificially created by the state from eggs and sperm inside a hatchery. And even at this point, the fate of every single person is sealed. They are immediately separated into classes ranging from Alpha Plus to Epsilon, and which letter they bear will dictate their entire lives. From the education they receive, to the jobs they will have, to their social position, all of it is determined from this moment. The Alpha Pluses will be the future scientists, leaders, and venerated achievers of the world, while the Deltas and the Epsilons will be stuck with menial tasks. Depending on which class an embryo belongs to, it is either given an ideal environment for nourishing its future physical and psychological development, or it is purposefully stunted with the application of alcohol and other solutions designed to hamper their intellect and body later in life. The idea here is that not only will an Epsilon not be able to do an Alpha Plus job, but they would not even want to. Once children are born, they are raised by the state, and the concept of mothers and fathers is totally forbidden. Every child is the government's child, and each little one is psychologically conditioned to hold certain beliefs about culture, society, and the other classes. Alphas are taught to look down on the Deltas and Epsilons, while Deltas and Epsilons are taught to venerate the Alphas, but only ever at a distance. This is also where the core principles of the culture of the state are conditioned. The tenets of unrestricted lovemaking, total emotional uninvestment in other people, and the absolute unquestionable authority of the world controllers are all hammered into these infant skulls through thousands of repetitions. Once they are grown, happiness drugs, named Soma, are available on demand. And anyone who feels sad or upset is encouraged to take some Soma to restore their former peace of mind. Misery is extremely frowned upon, and the idea of understanding empathy is seen as outdated.
Grace.
The only response anyone has to another's sadness is take a Soma. The story of Brave New World follows Lenina Crown, Bernard Marks, and Helmholtz Watson as they deal with the arrival of John the Savage, someone who was born outside of the world state. The plot begins in earnest when Bernard takes Lenina on holiday to a savage reservation. These reservations are the few places in the world left unconquered by the world state, and they live in small tribal communities. There, Bernard meets John, who will later be given the unflattering name John Savage, and his mother, Linda, who was a citizen of the world state mistakenly left behind on a previous expedition. Because his mother was originally from the world state, John has always been an outcast in the reservation, and Bernard agrees to take both him and his mother back to see this great civilization John had always heard about. At first, this works out wonderfully. Bernard gets a lot of social status for having found this unique anomaly, and John explores the world. Bernard is a psychologist, and he is fascinated by the way John's mind works so differently from having been raised outside the state. He also introduces John to both Helmholtz and Lenina. Helmholtz works in the government's propaganda wing, but he harbors a deep and treasonous fascination with what art could be, if it was allowed to be created through a free expression of human passion. And John's chaotic experiences on the reservation, as well as his knowledge of the banned works of Shakespeare, strike Helmholtz as incredible. Meanwhile, Lenina is very attracted to John. The feeling is mutual, but John has not been raised with the principles of total free love, where sex is basically the same thing as high-fiving. So he understandably feels threatened by Lenina's braggadocious advances, and eventually chases her away. Linda, John's mother, decides to spend the rest of her life in a drug-fueled, semi-comatose state in one of the government hospitals, which everyone is broadly approving of, apart from John, who thinks that such artificial happiness is abhorrent. However, soon the drugs overtake Linda's system and her lungs begin to fail. John rushes to her bedside, weeping, but his grief, coupled with his repeated insistence that she is his mother and that he loves her, causes a public scandal. Everyone in the world state is conditioned to think of death as a pretty unremarkable event, and to think of natural birth as both morally abhorrent and disgusting. Children are given tours around the dying in order to death condition them, and when someone is no longer useful to the state, they are not considered to have that much value anyway. John's erratic behavior and natural displays of grief are considered socially disruptive, and he, Bernard, and Helmholtz are all hauled up in front of Mustafa Mond, one of the 10 world controllers. Here, Mustafa and John engage in a fascinating philosophical dialogue over the value of different aspects of human experience. And trust me, we are going to go into detail about this later. Mustafa sends Bernard and Helmholtz away to one of the many islands the state sends people with enough original thought to be considered dangerous, while he allows John to go free. Bernard is horrified at the thought of exile, but Mustafa almost envies him. Apparently, these exiled islands are not too bad, and are also full of the most interesting people left on the planet. In fact, those considered so interesting that they are a social disruption. Having been released back into society, John sets up shop in a lighthouse and wishes to serve as a living counterpoint to the hedonistic values of the new world. He engages in self-flagellation and becomes deliberately primitive, eschewing any sign of the civilization he so hates. However, soon people begin to show up at his retreat in order to watch this modern Diogenes. He is a curiosity, and people will not leave him alone. Robbed of even the small respite of solitude, John ends his own life. This could have been a last act of rebellion, or of despair, or of torment. But either way, the man from the wilderness who was the only living person who
I have to figure out what this black thing was I consumed.
Is dead, and the brave new world continues. It is